Chapter 641. Shu Sen's face turned gloomy. He did not expect that the road back to the White Sands continent would be sealed. He had gathered all of the underworld continent's demonic mounts, and excitedly returned to the White Sands continent, but he did not expect that the road ahead would be blocked and many merchant groups were stuck there. Why are we going to the Shang continent? Shu Sen cut him off snappily. Master and the rest definitely have not left the White Sands continent yet. Do you think I should just sit and watch? Shu Sen admired Wuxia. The underworld continent had finally produced a genius. But Shu Sen was able to find a peaceful place underneath the berserk energy vortex. Wuxia and the other novices were initially panicking, but under Shu Sen's command, they started to become more presentable. The low-intensity battle to these novices was the best chance to practice. The following battles did not have much suspense. Shu Sen was extremely slippery like a loach. He quietly moved forward through the gaps between the pirates. The road to the White Sands continent has already been sealed. The merchant who spoke had a look of worry. I do not know where a large group of pirates came from, but now the entire White Sands continent is filled with pirates. A few merchant groups have already met with calamity. Listen to me. Do not go to the White Sands continent at this time. Wait for this storm to pass. Sai, it is not easy to do business these days. That's right. Just give your life to boss. To be able to gather such a large force together, the mastermind's strength was truly terrifying. But occasionally when they talked about Master Bing, they would see Master Shu Sen's face filled with reverence, and even the old seniors would be filled with admiration, causing Wuxia and the rest to be filled with curiosity. Once they were hiding underneath a gigantic energy vortex and all of them were trembling in fear. This subordinate is not greedy for these small benefits. Wuxia immediately explained, if we can snatch some equipment we can disguise ourselves as pirates. We can use the enemy's pursuit as a cover to get closer to the White Sands continent. In theory this small warship could only carry 40 people. Compared to that, the process of escaping was much more dangerous. Only at that moment did Wuxia and the rest realized in shock how powerful Shu Sen was. The pirates on the 3 frigates were definitely small pirates, but they were small fish-eating shrimps. Seeing the lone frigate, the pirates immediately coveted it. Shu Sen was able to sense the other party's tracks from extremely far away, and then hide before the other party discovered him. The sea of energy was like his home. All the dangerous whirlpools, turbulent flows, energy clumps became his best cover. In the end, Shu Sen and the others managed to seize the warship without any mishaps. However, the warship had also suffered some damage and looked somewhat damaged. Fortunately, there was a lot of equipment on the warship. Although they were only ordinary goods, it was enough to equip them. They had completely sealed off the White Sands continent. A famous general. Shu Sen stared at the rookies and said in a deep voice, all of you are clearer than me about the reputation of the underworld continent's demonic mounts. All these years who has looked at you in the eye? Now this is a chance for us to prove ourselves, to prove the name of the underworld system's demonic mounts. I think you've had enough of this humiliation. The energy whirlpool above their heads released a terrifying shriek, causing their hair to stand. Forget about their small frigates, even the large-scale warships would avoid the whirlpool, afraid of being sucked into it. There were large-scale pirate groups here and every pirate group had a fixed position. They did not move around randomly and instead, every pirate group was guarding an area. After fighting all the way, the rookies of the underworld system's demonic mounts quickly became seasoned. They started to understand how to use their own strength, how to cooperate, and how to unleash the things they had trained. They fought and killed their way forward. Whenever they met a small group of pirates, they would rush forward, and upon seeing a larger group of pirates they would escape. As they only had one warship, the larger groups of pirates did not even have the interest to chase after them. The big fish ate the small fish, and the shrimps were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Shu Sen's eyebrows relaxed. Shu Sen also took the chance to train the rookies. As long as they went through a few battles and saw blood, these rookies who were originally strong would very quickly become qualified soldiers. A slightly tattered warship appeared in the sea of energy. Last night, Shu Sen and the rest suddenly infiltrated a warship that was anchored there, and successfully seized control of the warship. The warship belonged to a merchant group, and was the warship that escorted the merchant group. But Shu Sen had chased everyone in, causing the small warship to be filled to the brim. After that, Shu Xian controlled the small warship and quietly slipped into the inner circle. One day later, no army was able to pass through the blockade. We need some equipment, Wuxia said calmly, that way we can protect ourselves. He muttered to himself, I wonder what exactly happened in the White Sands continent. Boss, what do we do now? Why don't we change our route to the Shang continent? After 2 warships were destroyed, the remaining warships saw that the situation was not good, and immediately turned and ran. Shu Xian did not give the order to chase, but kept the resources as the pirates had some good equipment. Everyone was looking at Shu Xian waiting for his next decision. But Shu Xian was shrewd and ruthless, although the blockade was tight, but it was against a large-scale army and there were still a few loopholes. Shu Xian returned to the outer circle and killed a small group of pirates and chose the smallest and most unremarkable small warship. Their battle results were not bad and the spoils of war were not bad. Unknowingly they had changed their weapons and their equipment was much better than before. Among the small groups of pirates they were definitely the elites. The closer they got to the White Sands continent, the more cautious Shu Xian became because he could feel that the security was much tighter. Shu Xian was already 100% sure that the pirates had some sort of agreement. 3 against 1, no matter how he looked at it, they had the advantage. Under Shu Xian's command, the unremarkable small warship finally passed through the layers of blockade and arrived at the White Sands continent. Then tell me what you think? Shu Xian said. Boss is right. Shu Xian was experienced for such a large-scale gathering of pirates. There was definitely someone secretly controlling it. If not, there was some big fat meat that attracted the pirates. He was called Wuxia and was the strongest out of all of them, and was also the strongest among the underworld continent's demonic mounts in the past few years, and had the highest prestige amongst the new demonic mounts. It truly made people look forward to it. When they were seizing the ship, there were some accidents and both parties engaged in an intense battle. To become outstanding soldiers they needed more time in battles. For Master we need to go back. Shu Xian said, Master has always treated us well, now that Master is in danger, if we go back and leave, we will not be able to live in the future. That's a good idea. Shu Xian nodded his head and said resolutely, let's do it that way. Shu Xian's old subordinates all responded, while the newly recruited underworld continent's demonic mounts looked at each other. If not for Shu Xian's prestige they would have long turned and left. After overcoming the initial psychological barrier, the newbies started to perform better. At that time the commotion was too big with 7 to 8 warships chasing after them, if not for Shu Xian's rich experience, and using the complicated terrain of the Sea of Energy to shake off the pursuers, they would have died in the Sea of Energy. Seeing that the other party no longer had the mood to talk, Shu Xian took his leave. They safely passed through the enemy's patrol line, and Wuxia and the rest had already revered Shu Xian as a god. Shu Xian was secretly shocked. What kind of person would be able to do such a thing, to be able to command so many pirates? The pirate groups in charge of sealing the inner circle were all famous big pirate groups and all of them were heroes. But after the battle even Wuxia, who was a proud and arrogant person, was convinced by Shu Senator, although Wuxia and the rest were usually not weak, but they had 0 battle experience and were rookies that could not be any more new, and in front of Shu Xian, who was a wily old fox, it was not enough. Wuxia continued, there are so many pirates around the White Sands continent. I believe there are definitely a few small groups of pirates that want to fish in troubled waters. And even if there are people controlling them from the dark, but with so many pirates they will definitely not know each other. Pirates have always believed that the fist is the truth. Even if there is an agreement, if there is a chance to merge, they will not let it go. Thinking about it, the surrounding area of the White Sands continent is currently in chaos. To us, this is our chance. The 3 warships in front of them rushed towards them. Who knew that Wuxia would shake his head? Maybe snatching is better. Seeing the incoming pirates, Shu Xian sneered. He ignored Wuxia, who was beside him, who was eager to fight and ran for his life. A young man bowed respectfully and said, Master's teachings are right. When we came out this time we never thought of returning alive. We will definitely not tarnish the name of the underworld continent's demonic mounts. Snatch. Shu Xian frowned. He hated being a bandit, and upon hearing that he became unhappy. Could it be that the current underworld continent's demonic mounts had already fallen to such a state? Under the gigantic energy whirlpool that spanned over 10 kilometers, Shu Xian calmly drank and ate, chatting and laughing. Just this bearing was enough to completely convince Wuxia and the rest. Shi Sen's methods were not limited to just that. He made Wuxia and the rest observe the time of the patrol fleet's appearance, and then taught them how to plan out the patrol fleet's timetable. The chaotic and disorderly sea of energy was the best training ground. There were pirates everywhere and danger could be encountered at any time. The new recruits' battles were never trustworthy, but their training was definitely tough. To be able to obtain the title of Underworld Continent's demonic mounts, their individual strength was not a problem. To them, Master Shi Sen was already extremely powerful, and for Master Bing, who was even more powerful than Master Shi Sen, how powerful would he be? After escaping, he successfully pulled the other party's troops apart, and without hesitation he gave the order to turn and rush towards the nearest warship. That's right, I still have some money, I can buy some equipment. Shi Sen nodded his head. Chapter 642. Ying had never felt so humiliated before. They were the second army in the entire White Sands continent. Other than that damned Suabai, no one was stronger than him. Ying's face was filled with a sinister smile. His heart was filled with the thrill of being suppressed. The humiliation he had suffered outside the Moon Manor made the thrill even more intense. The collapse of every shop made him tremble with excitement. These ant-like fellows should all die, all of them must die. As expected by Tang Chou, in the short span of 5 minutes, the Swift Army's attacks became sparse. The Swift Army soldiers were still lacking in experience, and did not know how to allocate their strength in such a tough battle. Moreover, a temporary formation was still inferior to a warship. Tang Chou remained expressionless. The individual strength of the Swift Army was not strong, and the number of Silver Saints in the army were too few. Under such a crazy and intense attack, they would not be able to hold on for long. Xie Yuan's arrangements were extremely outstanding. Even someone as picky as Tang Chou could not find any fault with it. Even if time was tight, Xie Yuan's arrangements were still very meticulous. He didn't directly use the shops as his main stronghold. Instead, he used the underground warehouse of the shops as his main stronghold. The shops above the ground were just a cover. In the past, they were just a bronze army of a place. No matter how strict their training was, they had never experienced a true battle. In front of a silver-grade army, they did not have any strength to resist. Even the enemy's fierce attack just now had made most of them feel suffocated and terrified. Get close. These underground warehouses and secret rooms were the most important places in every shop. They were used to store precious goods. Ying stared blankly at the battlefield. He had never thought that the situation would suddenly become like this. Almost half of his second army had been lost, and such a loss had never happened before in the history of the Second Army. A few low-flying battleships were immediately engulfed by the flames and exploded violently. Countless splinters of wood and broken limbs flew everywhere. The densely packed light sword seemed to fill the sky with a soul-shaking whistle. In the face of such an all-encompassing attack, the bravery of an individual seemed extremely insignificant. Countless amounts of blood blossomed in the sky, and miserable screams were drowned out by the roar of the light swords. Every single soldier of the Swift Army roared out in rage. They could not hear anything with their ears and could only roar out instinctively. All the energy in his body poured into the warship weapon in front of him without any reservation. These warship weapons had been set up in the formation, and now they had become great killing machines that reaped lives. Other than that, what Tang Chou admired the most was Xie Yuan's composure. A mercenary group actually dared to raise their weapons and charge at them? He was an excellent general. Boom. This unforeseen event was extremely sudden. Another shop was turned to dust. The soldiers inside were already quite experienced, and they retreated a step before the energy barrier broke. However, there were still 10 soldiers who were not buried in time. The figure that flashed past Hiku's vision made him come back to his senses. Tang Chou glanced at Xie Yuan. The usually calm Xie Yuan seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. Tang Chou did not mock him at all. Instead, a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. Xie Yuan's adjutant tried to persuade him several times, but Xie Yuan remained firm and unwavering. There was even a warship that was less than 30 meters away from them. Xie Yuan could even clearly see the middle finger that the enemy on the warship had extended while laughing wildly. The black mass of warships and people circled above their heads. To prevent the enemy from discovering their true intentions, the fake formation on the ground was guarded by soldiers. The second army's attack was extremely ferocious, causing the soldiers on the ground to quickly suffer casualties. But Xie Yuan was still able to control himself, and waited for the best opportunity to come. The situation of the battlefield was exactly what they had guessed. Run. Where to run? Including He Ying, everyone thought that the enemies below had already lost the ability to resist, and never thought that they would encounter such a terrifying sneak attack. He Ying also thought so, seeing his own soldiers chasing after the enemies like tigers and wolves. The killing intent in He Ying's heart grew even stronger. Not good. I have waited for this moment, finally. In front of absolute strength, the people below are just a group of ants. He did not notice that a group of figures suddenly rushed out from below. No, at that moment no one thought about winning, they wanted a massacre. Only a massacre can allow them to vent the anger in their hearts. Against ants, what tactics do we need? Crush them, we just need to crush them. Either you die or I die. He Ying's mournful cry had not even finished, when the ground of the street below suddenly cracked like a spider web. The second army is an elite. But at that moment, when Xie Yuan finally gave the order to attack, all of their fear transformed into the most frenzied fighting intent. The warships in the sky were swept clean. The size of the warships were huge and they were immediately seen as targets, so they were the first batch to be killed. And the soldiers in the sky had lost at least a third of their numbers. Bang! He lowered his head to look down. His own soldiers had chased a few hundred meters away. At the start they were still cautious since the vanguard unit had been destroyed, and He Ying did not dare to be careless. But the situation was completely one-sided, and the hatred from the humiliation surged in his mind, causing him to finally lose his last bit of scruples. He wanted to ruthlessly trample on the ants. The soldiers of the second army were a group of arrogant soldiers. The entire gold street was almost destroyed by them, but the enemies were still holed up, causing them to despise the enemies. Instead of saying that it was a battle, it was more like a performance, a beautiful performance in front of the entire White Sands city. Impossible. Who knew that upon seeing that the situation was not good, the mercenary army would turn and run? A mercenary army actually dares to attack a silver-grade army. Bang bang bang. He stared blankly at the street that was in ruins. His mind was buzzing. I was bitten by a group of ants. The soldiers of the second army regained their senses. All of them were enraged, their eyes were red, and without hesitation they rushed towards the enemies. They wanted to tear the group of assholes to shreds. The soldiers of the second army chased after the enemies crazily. All of their chests were filled with rage. They were experienced in battles and immediately knew that the soldiers in the formation were exhausted, and as long as they got rid of the fleas they could still win. In the blink of an eye, He Ying suddenly realized that the entire sky had become empty. Everyone pressed forward. But, in the short span of 5 minutes, the results were remarkable. The destroyed warships had bought time for the soldiers and attracted the majority of the attacks. He Ying could not believe his eyes. I was actually ambushed? He Ying's roar could be heard from far away. The explosions in the sky were endless. The light auras from the fireballs lit up the sky. The shops on the ground were all destroyed, but the main formation did not suffer much damage. And the warship weapons were arranged in an impenetrable manner. After meticulous planning, the light pillars, light bullets and light swords interweaved in the sky to form an impenetrable net, a true death net. Finally, it's your turn to taste our power. If not for them not having a path of retreat, if not for the daily strict training that had long become their instincts, if not for their respected master standing at the front lines with them, they would have long crumbled. These ants actually dare to charge at us. But Xie Yuan's performance had already exceeded his expectations, and the battle after that belonged to him. He Ying suddenly reacted, his face turning pale white. Around him there were less than 20 bodyguards left. The warships and soldiers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood and started to attack. Up till now the enemy did not even have a single decent attack. I heard that the 2 armies below are newly bought. They have never heard that armies can actually be bought and sold. The entire second army was filled with disdain towards the enemy. The swift army who had long been stifled to their limits vented out all of their anger. Countless of dazzling light pillars, light bullets that resembled raindrops, dense rain of swords, without any warning, they pounced towards the densely packed enemies in the sky from the Golden Street. A regiment of flames exploded inside the formation. one of the warship weapons in the formation was unable to withstand the intense battle and exploded. The flames from the explosion spread to the soldiers inside the formation, but luckily the power was not strong and did not injure the soldiers. But the soldiers who had lost their weapons were at a loss. They were still in a frenzied state of battle. Destroy this street for me. Some of the warships even removed their energy barriers to display their bravery. After resting, the Skull unit had recovered their fighting strength, and Aya personally rushed to the front. They formed a group of 15, and like poisonous thorns that shot out from the ground, their targets were the soldiers of the Second Army in the sky who were in a daze. The warships were supplied with energy, and the soldiers needed to consider the impact of the energy on their bodies, but the warship weapons that were deployed in the formation consumed the energy in the soldiers' bodies. A cold glint flashed past Tang Chao's eyes. The Skull unit had already completed their formation, and were prepared to counterattack. When he saw the situation in front of him, blood surged to his face. Bang bang bang. When the ferocious attack suddenly arrived, their minds went blank. He was an outstanding general. Tang Chou did not understand, how could such an outstanding general be reduced to the point of being bought over along with his army? Comparing the standard of a general, Xie Yuan was many times stronger than Aya. The entire Golden Street had lost most of the shops, and only a few were left, swaying in the wind and rain from the explosions. These few shops were the largest businesses in the Golden Street, for example the Suji Worldwide Commerce. They were rich and overbearing, the goods in their shops were of astonishing value, and the construction of their shops were not spared. He Ying was so angry that he trembled. Kill them all. Dust filled the sky, rocks fell like rain, a warship broke out from the ground. The spiderweb-like ground exploded with a loud bang. Xie Yuan roared with all his might, attack. Gather. They actually dare. Chapter 643. The astonishing synchronization rate brought about an astonishing might. It was just 21 men, but they were releasing the aura of a small army. Everyone attack. With that he turned his face with a sinister look. He roared at the control room. Charge. Kill them. Tang Chou was satisfied, although the Second Army had lost more than half of their men, but in a head-on clash, the Skull unit was still not their match. The reason why the Swift Army was able to achieve such a result was because the enemy had underestimated them, and on the other hand, they had the advantage of defense and warship weapons. Stop it. Quickly stop it. He knew of the battle below, but he did not bide his time, because he had absolute confidence in Tang Tian's strength. In the past battles, Tang Tian had met many enemies that he could not win against, but the final victor would always be Tang Tian. Even if the situation was dangerous, he still chose to bet on Tang Tian's victory without hesitation. To a tyrant, buying a Black Arrow warship was not a strange thing, but it would be strange if they did not buy one. Energy surged into the honeycomb sword cannon, and the swords floating behind him started to light up. Black Arrow warship. But Tang Chou did not care. The moment the Black Arrow warship appeared, he knew that the deciding factor of the battle was not the Skull unit but Tang Tian. Without hesitation he once again placed his hopes on Tang Tian. You get what you pay for. The Black Arrow warship was just a small warship, but its price was equivalent to 10 warships, so how could the Second Army not know of its strength? Even the Second Army could not afford such an expensive warship like the Black Arrow warship. They were all used by the tyrants to equip their own private guards. The light aura that splashed out lit up the night sky. The energy barrier of the Black Arrow warship trembled intensely, and the sound of the collision could be heard throughout the city. Truly crazy. And if it was a single person controlling it, it required a silver saint. Seeing the stubborn look in He Ying's eyes, little fool was helpless. I will fight for you. He Ying broke out in cold sweat from the sword aura that brushed past him. The thick stone floor was forcefully smashed open by the Black Arrow warship. The intense trembling of the warship caused Tang Tian to become even more excited. Xie Yuan's expression was very ugly. The synchronization rate of these 21 people had reached an astonishing 92%. Tang Tian wasn't upset because of the blood he spat out, but because he didn't seize such a great opportunity. All of Tang Chao's attention was on the Black Arrow warship. The battle between the two experts was so fast that they couldn't even catch a glimpse of it, let alone support and escape. His Excellency had finally appeared. The honeycomb sword cannon was of a higher grade than the one on Qinyu Rant's warship, which meant that its impact on the body was even more intense. Tang Tian, who had just been injured, was caught off guard and vomited blood from the impact. It was as though they had been injected with chicken blood, all of them focused on piloting the Black Arrow warship, which quickly left the ground. The soldiers seemed to wake up from a dream, but they immediately fell into a frenzy. Nothing made their blood boil more than the leader taking the lead. Damn it! As long as Tang Tian killed He Ying before the skull unit could no longer hold on, then they would win, if not they would lose. Little Fool did not care, but curiously tried to sense the honeycomb sword cannon. His delicate little face was extremely cute. Little Fool stared at Tang Tian, who was glaring at him with his veins popping out. The fool did not seem to feel the blood flowing out. His bulging muscles were as hot as steel, releasing an astonishing amount of heat. Under the steam, the entire warship was filled with a dense and pungent smell of blood. Tang Tian sat on the honeycomb sword cannon, his bloodied hands holding onto the handle. He said without a care, "As long as I think it's meaningful." Unexpectedly, Tang Chou chose an order that seemed to be untimely. If it was an outstanding commander like Xie Yuan, they would usually hesitate at such a time. Because they had their own judgment of the situation, and Tang Chou's order that seemed to go against common sense would cause them to struggle. The soldiers of the Second Army then suddenly remembered that they were facing a true tyrant. A tyrant who dared to use a sky-high bounty to wipe out the Golden Rose in one night. A tyrant who dared to use cloud coins to buy 2 armies. But the honeycomb sword cannon is interesting. Xiu. Protect Master. When they saw the position of the Black Arrow warship, the entire Second Army perspired in cold sweat. Chance. The sword behind Tang Tian's chair suddenly lit up. If Tang Chou was said to be filled with insight and astonishing judgment, then Tang Tian was said to have the terrifying intuition of a wild beast. Without thinking, he immediately attacked He Ying. But Aya's skull unit did not. At times, being weak had its own benefits. Aya and the rest had not regained their senses from the shock, much less forming their own judgments. They did not even understand the situation in front of them. So when they heard Tang Chou's order to attack with full force, they did not think much and immediately took action. A blazing red blade aura flew out from the 21-men formation, fiercely slashing onto the Black Arrow warship. Previously, the Swift Army's frenzied attack had destroyed all of the warships of the Second Army. When the Second Army suddenly realized that the enemy's warships were threatening He Ying's safety, they realized that they had no warships to support them. Godlike young lad, go go go. Light auras rained down as 100 swords shot out. He Ying had not regained his senses from the sudden turn of events, and it was an extremely rare opportunity. Get closer to me. Bang. Xie Yuan bit down on his lips, his eyes filled with worry, but it was a pity that his entire Swift Army was paralyzed on the ground, without any strength to retaliate. That's right, he was a Silver Saint. The Second Army also had warships, but they were all medium-sized and above warships. All the large-sized warships were not suitable for fighting inside cities, so he used warships. And small-sized warships were expensive, and their usefulness in the battlefield could not compare to large and medium-sized warships. And if it was a battle inside a city, cheap and good quality warships were the better choice. Fight side by side. A sword aura surged out, but Tang Tian suffered a heavy blow. He spat out a mouthful of blood and lost control of the sword aura, causing it to fly to the side. Bang! Tang Tian leaned back on his chair, his mouth twitched, his face covered in blood revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. Little Fool thought that he had finally convinced Tang Tian, but who knew that Tang Tian would laugh weirdly? Let us fight side by side. The battle between Tang Tian and Xie Fei had frightened them to the point that their faces were white, and they did not dare to come down. 2 of them were unlucky and were struck by Xie Fei's finger auras and were injured. Tang Tian knew that the skull unit's all-out attack would not be able to last for long. The appearance of the warship caused everyone to be surprised. No one thought that there would actually be a warship below. Silver-grade warship weapons were powerful, but the conditions to use them were harsh. For example, the heaven-binding ghost blade. If many people were to use it, it would require 20 soldiers proficient in blade techniques, and the synchronization rate would need to be above 75% to achieve its standard might. And if the synchronization rate was lower than 70%, it would be unusable. Rumble rumble. Screams filled with panic rose and fell one after another. Damn it. Little Fool did not even bother to roll his eyes. As long as the fool appeared, all the peace would be swept away. Tang Tian, who rushed out of the ground, immediately saw He Ying. Idiot. Wait a minute, tyrant. But when they saw Tang Tian, who was covered in blood, stepping on the blood-red footprints, he walked towards the warship step by step. They were dumbstruck. Could it be that the master still wants to fight when he is so heavily injured? And because they were not united in their thoughts, some of the soldiers were bitterly holding on, while the other soldiers were extremely anxious, thinking of supporting their commander. The lack of unity in their thoughts caused their coordination to become even more chaotic. What was worse was that due to the Skull unit's frenzied attacks, the soldiers who had turned to support He Ying were caught unprepared and suffered many casualties. The soldiers of the Second Army who were just about to turn did not expect for the Skull unit to suddenly attack with all their might, and were flustered and flustered. When Tang Tian defeated Xie Fei, they all cheered frantically. He Ying's face immediately changed. Kill. Tang Tian held onto the handle tightly, his face twitching twice. The intense shaking of the warship caused his wounds to open up again and blood flowed out. Everyone immediately woke up. Master. Their first reaction was to turn and support He Ying. 100 swords resonated. Buzz buzz buzz. It was the only chance for them to win. There is no meaning in acting rashly. Little fool said coldly. A thunderous roar resonated out inside the warship. The warship directly smashed into the rocks above. I made the right bet. The Skull unit, who did not have the advantage in strength, was actually not at a disadvantage. He Ying used his actions to tell Xie Yuan the strength of a silver-grade army. Tang Tian's face changed. I'm in trouble. So powerful. Little fool shook his head. He kept Saint Sword Ocean Prison and floated to a seat of the honeycomb sword cannon and sat down. Little fool's figure was petite and cute. Sitting on the spacious seat, he looked extremely comical and cute. Although the Black Arrow warship was a small-scale warship, but it was a true silver-grade warship. It was loaded with silver-grade warship weapons, and the warship weapons that Tang Tian had requested to be modified were all silver-grade warship weapons. Such a crude and direct entrance made Tang Tian extremely excited. He shouted out excitedly, "Go go go!" Tang Tian's expression became even more sinister and ferocious. In a narrow path, only the courageous would win at that time. It was either you die or I die. Tang Chou, who heaved a sigh of relief, was the first to react. Tang Chou's bearing as a famed general was displayed at that moment. In such an intense battle, victory or defeat would usually be decided 1 second earlier. But they had met Tang Chou, and the moment the warship appeared, Tang Chou's reaction was different from everyone else. He heaved a sigh of relief. He Ying roared, and the 20 elites around him immediately gathered around him. Very quickly, all of their auras merged into one, the energy in their bodies synchronized. Tang Tian, who was covered in blood, sat on the seat of the honeycomb sword cannon. He was rejoicing in his heart. He had specially picked 10 soldiers from the Skull unit who knew how to operate the warship. If not, they would not be able to operate the warship. The Black Arrow warship was a small-scale warship, and did not require many soldiers to operate it. Chapter 644. He Ying was about to retaliate, but in the next moment his expression froze. As if he didn't feel anything, he glared angrily and roared like a tiger. Just how many secrets did that careless fellow have on him? He Ying was very confident in his red sandstorm. Its defensive capabilities were much stronger than normal energy shields, and it was inspired by the sandstorms in the desert. The high-speed rotating airflow could deflect the enemy's attack and increase the defensive power. Adding a large amount of hard and heavy light sand into the storm could make the storm even thicker and harder to break through. What he did not know was that when Tang Tian's honeycomb sword cannon exploded, the emotionless little fool who did not care about the matter, suddenly had a cold glint flash past his eyes. His body trembled. He knew that if such a monster really appeared on the battlefield, who could stop it? No one could stop them. If every battleship in the fleet could do the same, then no one in the entire sanctum could stop them. Boom. The corner of He Ying's mouth revealed a cold smile. The synchronized energy under his command quickly transformed into a red storm, protecting them in the middle. Dense whistling sounds resonated in the night sky. Wave after wave of sword auras, like an endless rain of light, shot out from the Black Arrow warship. Shoo. There were only 20 people by He Ying's side, but they were all steel guards that had followed him for many years. Every one of them was an elite of the army. They were very familiar with battle formations. It was definitely not a problem for them to fight 1 against 10. Bai Yu thought about the pirate war that Bai Xiao had mentioned before. In that battle, Meng Nan seemed to have used the honeycomb sword cannon, and it was rather extraordinary. In just a short 10 seconds, He Ying felt as though a day had passed like a year. It was incomparably long. The defensive power of the Red Sand Tempest was indeed outstanding, but the number of sword auras was too shocking. With such a crazy bombardment, He Ying felt an immense pressure. The energy within their bodies was being consumed at an alarming rate. Everyone hold on. He Ying roared. The enemy won't be able to hold on for long. Bang. Heavens. He Ying forced himself to calm down and maintain Crimson Sand Tempest with all his might. The powerful defensive power of the Red Sand Tempest was on full display at this moment. The raindrop-like sword auras bombarded the tempest, but did not have much effect. Other than holding on, He Ying had no other choice. If the red sand storm wavered even a little, they would be devoured by the torrent of sword radiance, and not even their bones would be left. He Ying was extremely confident. Sure, they had some level of skill. From the density of the attacks, it could be seen that the other party's skill was pretty good. But to think that a mere honeycomb sword cannon could kill a silver-grade general, they were underestimating him. The honeycomb sword cannon was usually used to deal with scattered soldiers. Its power was not considered strong, but it could fire a lot of them at once, and the area it enveloped was huge. Little Fool held onto the handle of the honeycomb sword cannon. Tang Tian's angry roars drilled into his ears, but he was indifferent, as though he did not hear anything. Up until now, he hadn't even attacked once. His expression was the same as always, as if the battle in front of him had nothing to do with him. To a silver-grade general like He Ying, as long as he revealed a single flaw, he would be able to turn the tables, much less such a fatal flaw. The dense sword auras were like a rain of light, bringing forth a terrifying whistling sound as they pounced towards He Ying. Before he finished his sentence, the dazzling sword light struck the red sand storm with a straight and dazzling streak of light. All of the guards clenched their teeth and held on. They had absolute trust in He Ying, and at the same time, they believed that the enemy would not be able to hold on for long. Such a crazy attack, no one would be able to hold on for long. A chessboard light appeared beneath Little Fool's feet. The powerful impact surged into Little Fool's body, causing the chessboard beneath Little Fool's feet to suddenly light up. Bang! It shattered into countless of light auras. The red sand storm trembled. He Ying and the rest felt a sweetness in their throats. Blood leaked out of their mouths, their faces filled with shock. The floating swords behind the seats once again became bright. Tang Tian roared, and the terrifying sword auras surged out once again. The dense sword auras formed a torrent, continuously striking the red sand storm. He Ying's face was as white as paper. The heavy sword attack, although they had blocked it, but the red sandstorm was also heavily injured. Wave after wave of ferocious energy continued to surge into Tang Tian's body, causing his body to tremble like a sieve, countless of blood arrows shooting out at the same time. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth, causing the sneer on his face to become even more bewitching. His mission was completed. When he attacked, Tang Tian had already taken the chance to pounce towards the undamaged honeycomb sword cannon. Wait a minute. Furthermore, although the honeycomb sword cannon could shoot out a shocking number of sword auras, its attack frequency was not high. After every attack there would definitely be a pause. Usually the warship had many battle positions, so this weakness was not fatal. But currently the opponent only had one honeycomb sword cannon, so this weakness would be magnified. Without the obstruction, the sword auras surged forward, destroying everything in their path. Bai Yu hugged his head, his face filled with disbelief. He had heard Bai Xiao talk about how powerful Meng Nan was when using the honeycomb sword cannon, but when he personally witnessed how the honeycomb sword cannon could continuously shoot out a rain of swords without any gaps, all of his common sense was toppled. But they knew that at the moment they definitely could not panic. Such a terrifying attack, the burden that the opponent had to endure would definitely be astonishing. A swordsman's body was never known for its sturdiness. He Ying, who had been bitterly holding on, was ecstatic. That's right, even if the opponent's soldiers could endure such a terrifying attack, the honeycomb sword cannon itself would not be able to endure such a terrifying attack. Tang Tian's roar stopped abruptly. The overheated honeycomb sword cannon exploded into pieces, the dust enveloping the entire battle position, causing Tang Tian to be unable to react in time. In terms of sword laws, Little Fool was a few streets ahead of Tang Tian, and after fumbling around for a while, Little Fool understood the theory behind the honeycomb sword cannon. Tang Tian's unreasonable attack method caused Little Fool to snort in disdain, but the results were good, so he did not appear and waited for an opportunity. He wanted to roar in anger but no sound came out. His vision was a vast expanse of white. He Ying had rich battle experience and was extremely familiar with the current trend of warships. Seeing that the Black Arrow warship only had one battle position gathering light auras, he heaved a sigh of relief. With his deep understanding of sword techniques, the honeycomb sword cannon displayed astonishing might in Little Fool's hands. He Ying, who was about to counterattack, suddenly heard a sharp whistle, and jumped in fright. The opponent actually still had people. What made him feel even more uneasy was that he did not sense anything. The opponent's attack did not have any warning. He suddenly quivered. As a famed general, he immediately grasped the main point. If such a scene were to appear on the battlefield. He Ying's face changed. When he raised his head, the rain of swords suddenly converged into one, transforming into a dazzling sword aura. Even the attacks with astonishing destructive power could not shake the red sand tempest, much less the honeycomb sword cannon. Another scalp-numbing whistle came out. Another rain of swords struck the red sand tempest. If one looked carefully, they would realize that the high-speed red sand tempest had countless of dark red light sand inside. All of these energy formed dark red light sand, causing the tempest's might to become even more astonishing. Bang! Warship weapons are not suitable for spirit generals at all. Little Fool's body swayed, although he had channeled the majority of his power into the chessboard, but the remaining impact made him uncomfortable and he had no strength to attack again. The swords floating behind him lit up at the same time. Bang bang bang. You're here. Bai Yu was startled and asked subconsciously. No. A sword aura flew towards He Ying, bringing along a sharp whistle. Swordsman. Luckily it was only one sword aura and was not like the torrent of sword auras, causing He Ying to feel more at ease. He Ying almost jumped up. Impossible. The Black Arrow warship is a good warship, but it lacks manpower and is just a wooden frame. Bai Yu did not dare to think further. Just the result of his thoughts was enough to make his limbs turn cold. He stared intently at the battlefield, afraid of missing any detail. Chance. The sword auras continued to strike the tempest. Countless light auras splashed out. The tempest blew the sword auras into pieces, but it was still extremely stable. Before he could finish rejoicing, the whistling sound in the air changed. The originally low and deep whistling sound suddenly became sharp and thin, like an awl drilling into his brain. Seeing that only one battle position lit up with light auras, it further confirmed He Ying's judgment. Mengnan did not have enough manpower. Warship weapons required a high synchronization rate and were not something that could be used casually. The tycoons loved to buy a pile of good equipment, but these equipment were usually of little use, and would even be piled up in the warehouse to collect dust. He Ying was too familiar with such corrupt and depraved ways. The honeycomb sword auras struck the wall of storm, causing countless of turbulence, but the wall of storm did not move. The red sand tempest completely crumbled. He had heard of the news of Mengnan buying a warship, but he did not think much of it. Because Mengnan did not have enough manpower to unleash the power of a warship, it was not as simple as buying a warship. He then understood why the opponent's attack did not have any warning signs. Honeycomb sword cannon. Bai Xiao replied. He was excited. Every time he thought about the previous scene, he felt as though he was in a dream. He Ying, whose face was pale white, bellowed, "Be careful." Witnessing the scene from afar, Bai Xiao muttered to himself absent-mindedly, "It's here." The impact produced by the honeycomb sword cannon was huge and no one could ignore it. He had never seen any small group that could continuously use the honeycomb sword cannon. It was illogical. If a warship, every battle position was like that. He Ying's eyes congealed. Honeycomb sword cannon. Damn it. He Ying suddenly reacted. Only a swordsman with a unique understanding of the sword could use the honeycomb sword cannon to unleash such a terrifying attack. He Ying's mind trembled. There was only one sword aura, but it had a long tail light, and the might and chi it emitted, compared to the rain of swords, was many times stronger. At the moment, it was a competition of willpower. Whoever revealed a flaw first would lose. He was filled with curiosity. Xiao. One battle position required around 20 soldiers, and this number matched with the information that He Ying had obtained. He only had one thought in his mind: why was the honeycomb sword cannon so useless? The sword auras that struck the red sand tempest were scattered everywhere. The surging sword auras clashed against the red sand tempest. The berserk tempest met an even more berserk enemy. Chapter 645. Zhou Xian had just sneaked into the White Sands continent, and coincidentally witnessed the first army's attack. Zhou Xian immediately made the decision to attack the pirates. Su Bai muttered, "The reason why I sent the continent lord to Meng Nan's residence is because we are at the end of the line, and do not have any other reinforcements. And the other reason is that Lei Erfu mentioned something in Lei Erfu's letter that caught my attention. Lei Erfu said that the mysterious man behind him came to White Sands with the most important goal, to find a few families." Su Bai shook his head. Protecting White Sands is Su Bai's responsibility. The entire Sacred Saint Galaxy. Ambition, the Honorable Martial Continent's ambition is too big. Su Bai said coldly, "Our White Sands is in the center of the southern region. If there is internal strife, it will definitely affect the entire eastern region. Their plan is extremely ingenious. Using Miss Yu Rant's influence, not only our White Sands, even the surrounding aristocratic families, will be wiped out in one fell swoop. With these bargaining chips and the pirates appearing, no one will think that the Honorable Martial Continent is the true mastermind behind the chaos in the southern region." The betrayal of the Black Sand pirates led by Lian Bojun became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The pirate allied forces completely crumbled, and the second and third armies took the chance to kill their way out, killing countless people. Good. The new continent lord nodded his head, but he had some misgivings. "I'm afraid that I do not have enough prestige." Golden Rose's boss, single-eyed dark snake Lei Erfu? Xianxia exclaimed. The rest were also shocked. "They have already unified the western region." Su Bai said indifferently, "Their next goal is the entire Sacred Saint Galaxy." "How many families?" Meng Nan's background is very mysterious and definitely not ordinary. Su Bai's face congealed. "We have observed his actions and can be said to be extremely daring without any fear. Every time we do not think highly of him, he would always be able to turn defeat into victory, and no one knows what other trump cards he has. Furthermore, that spirit dyad is definitely a famed general. To have such a standard spirit dyad, the power behind Meng Nan is definitely not ordinary. We can only befriend him and not make him our enemy." Everyone thought that Tang Tian's blood and qi was weak, but after the doctor checked, they realized that Tang Tian's blood and qi was extremely vigorous. Tang Tian pain was not because his blood and qi was weak, but because his blood and qi was too vigorous, causing the arteries and veins to be extremely strong. As soon as these words were spoken, it was as if a heavy bomb had been thrown into everyone's hearts. After a long while, the new continent lord broke the silence and muttered, "I never thought that the Honorable Martial Continent's ambition would be so great." He was at a loss and suddenly raised his head. "Why does Master Su Bai believe that Meng Nan can protect me?" Beside him, the commanders of the second and third armies had looks of shame on their faces. The continent lord's mansion, the eldest young noble, no, he should be called the White Sands Continent's lord. He looked at Su Bai, who had a determined look on his face and was filled with gratitude. Everyone nodded. "But what benefits does this bring to the Honorable Martial Continent?" Xianxia did not understand. Everyone was in disbelief. This requirement was not too harsh or too high, but too low. Xianxia did not say anything. She knew that Master Su Bai's words would cause countless heads to roll, and countless families to be destroyed. "If it wasn't for you this time, indeed not." The one who spoke was the new continent lord. "The various continents of the western region that were destroyed by the Honorable Martial Continent are struggling at death's door. How would they have the strength to protect me?" The sudden disappearance of the first army, and before they left, they had asked her to bring the eldest young noble to seek protection from Meng Nan, and then suddenly appearing behind the pirate alliance before the pirates attacked. All of these plans were unfathomable. "Seems like he does not care about our foundation." Su Bai heaved a sigh of relief. He had always guessed that Meng Nan's strength was far stronger than the White Sands continent. It was the most logical guess and also the guess that made everyone relax. Currently, the White Sands continent was heavily injured, and the affairs of the continent were complicated and none of them could handle it. Everyone was enlightened and felt that Xia's guess was most likely true. The current western region was completely swallowed by the Honorable Martial Continent. and the number of continents that were destroyed by the honorable martial continent numbered in the thousands. If Mengnan was truly a descendant of one of the western region's continents, then the hatred between his country and his family would be extremely deep. We have no enmity with the honorable martial continent. Enemies of the honorable martial continent? Xianxia asked curiously. Could it be that Mr. Meng was a continent lord of one of the western region's continents? His words caused everyone to nod their heads. The new continent lord had a more direct understanding of Mengnan's strength. Mengnan's actions were definitely not like the descendants of other continents. That kind of unyielding and unreasonable ferocity, that kind of uncaring head-on clash, how was that like a refugee? And Mengnan's subordinates were all extremely ferocious. With that terrifying spirit diet, if they were truly in the western region, it would not be easy for the honorable martial continent to destroy them. Suobai muttered, he is our most important ally. If there is anything we can help with, we can do our best to help. If they go to the 5 southern island families, they will definitely not be able to enter, so why don't we openly send someone to be our guide and help both sides communicate? But we will not interfere in the matters between him and the 5 southern island families. This result caused everyone to be dumbstruck. Everyone could only click their tongues in wonder. As expected of a pervert after losing so much blood, his blood actually became even more vigorous. Amidst Tang Tian's screams, Zhou Xian respectfully reported the battle that he had gone through, while Hu Qing curiously observed his boss. He truly is too young. Then what about the 5 southern island families? The new continent lord asked Suobai. He knew that his qualifications were shallow and he had no experience, so he could only rely on Suobai. Honorable martial continent? Why the honorable martial continent? The first army that had disappeared for many days suddenly appeared behind the pirates, and unleashed a ferocious attack. Everyone was shocked speechless by Master Suobai's conclusion. The sacred Saint Galaxy's myriad of continents had been fighting for tens of thousands of years, and had never been unified before. If there was someone who wanted to unify the sacred Saint Galaxy, how could they not be stunned? Surprisingly, Suobai shook his head. I don't think so. The new continent lord immediately replied. He saved our lives. Furthermore, he did not seem to care about our white sands. He said that he had conditions. I asked him for them and he said that he only needed to borrow our business channels. Xianxia asked curiously, Master Suobai, how did you guess He Ying's plan? The battle did not stop because of He Ying's death. Lady Rose saw that the situation was bad and gave the pirates the signal to attack. Seeing that the White Sands continent was about to be plundered by the pirates, eldest young noble immediately appeared at the encampment of the 2nd and 3rd Army. He Ying and the continent lord were dead. Lady Rose's whereabouts were unknown. The 2 army commanders hesitated for a moment, then chose to surrender. Suobai nodded his head. On the 3rd day after Lei Erfu's death, I received a letter. It was arranged by Lei Erfu before his death. If he had died, the letter would have been sent to me. If he had not died, the letter would never have been sent. He is extremely crafty. The letter revealed many secrets. Lady Ro is from the Honorable Martial Continent. IOSSSS. The 5 families lived and multiplied in the southern island families, but rarely revealed themselves, and never interfered with the matters of other families, and could be said to be aloof from worldly affairs. So when everyone heard Master Suobai talk about the 5 southern island families, they were all shocked. She raised her head. This subordinate is willing to be Mr. Meng's guide and head towards the southern island families. Tang Tian's screams came out from the courtyard. He laid on the bed, his entire body wrapped in white bandages, only revealing his eyes. He could not even move a finger. He was too crazy after the battle with He Ying. In a short period of time his body had withstood an astonishing amount of energy. He felt as though his body had been hammered countless of times and was completely numb. When Tang Tian was dragged out of the warship, everyone was shocked. His entire body was soaked in blood, as though he had just been fished out from a pool of blood. There were a few wounds on his body that were still bleeding. If not for that conclusion, and it was Master Suobai who said it, no one would have believed it. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted. The Honorable Martial Continent had made such a big fuss for a few families. It showed how important they were, and they actually did not know about it. Because Mengnan is the Honorable Martial Continent's enemy. Suobai said. The battle had finally ended, and the other good news was that they had found Richard. Everyone's eyes landed on Suobai. the 5 southern island families. An eldest young noble decided to give them a chance to redeem themselves, and requested for them to defend against the pirates. The 2 armies that initially thought that they were doomed were all overjoyed, and fought with their lives on the line, forcefully blocking the pirates. Everyone was startled. Everyone knew about the 5 southern island families. About a few hundred years ago, the 5 southern island families migrated to White Sands. Coincidentally, White Sands was attacked by the pirates, and the 5 southern island families joined in the defense, helping White Sands obtain victory. At that time, the continent lord, for the sake of commending the 5 southern island families, gave them a piece of land in the southern island of White Sands continent, as a place for the 5 southern island families. From then on, they were known as the 5 southern island families. Continent lord, relax, there are some debts that need to be settled. Suo Bai's expression was cold. Colluding with the pirates, plotting to rebel, these people are evil beyond redemption. Using this chance, we need to thoroughly investigate the Honorable Marshall Continent's spies. If not, I am afraid that we will not be able to sleep well. Suo Bai revealed the truth. It was Lei Er Fu. Xianxia testified. That was what Mr. Meng said. The pirates immediately fell into chaos. That's right. Lei Er Fu spent a considerable amount of time investigating a few families, and after that all of the clues pointed towards the 5 southern island families. Suo Bai spoke. I have kept this matter in my heart, but did not plan to investigate it as the strength we have is too limited. But after that I unintentionally found out that Meng Nan's subordinates were also investigating the 5 southern island families, and I guessed that Meng Nan and the Honorable Marshall Continent had a hostile relationship. And the pain was brought about by the blood. Even the commanders of the 2nd and 3rd Army had faces of disbelief. They had thought of Lady Rose's origins, but no one had ever linked her to the Honorable Marshall Continent, who seemed to have nothing to do with each other. The new Continent Lord's eyes lit up. Good idea. Continent Lord, the most important thing to do now is to summon the various patriarchs and appease the people. Suo Bai said, now that everyone's thoughts are wavering, everyone hopes for peace. Dead silence. Chapter 646. This is the Green Sea of Mist. Xianxia explained, this mist is extremely poisonous, it can even corrode energy, we need to be careful. Libra constellation, Cancer constellation, Sagittarius constellation, Aries constellation and Aquarius constellation. But what was surprising was that the stream flowed in reverse. It flowed out from the valley below the cliff into the Green Sea of Mist, climbed up the cliff, and continued to climb up another mountain peak, where the peak was enveloped by the Green Sea of Mist. After about 20 minutes, a figure flew out from the Green Sea of Mist at the peak of the mountain, and flew down the mountain. The 5 southern island families migrated here 200 years ago. It is said that at that time the 13 families migrated to this place and had a huge split. 7 families migrated to the eastern region, 1 to the northern region, and the remaining 5 families did not want to leave their homeland, so they chose the southern region. Tang Tian did not feel anything and took out a few things from his bosom. Although he had lost face, but the White Sands Continent Lord had never thought of attacking the 5 families. In Heaven's Road, the Aquarius constellation was a famous tyrant constellation, and although Aquarius martial artists were not the strongest martial artists, they were definitely the wealthiest. The sudden voice caused Ting Ting to raise her head, her eyes revealing a cold glint. Honorable Martial Continent. How did he know that the Honorable Martial Continent is the enemy of the 5 families? In the past, the Southern Islands' green poison mist was also famous, but the scale was not as big. Some people say that the Green Sea of Mist was purposely created by the 5 families, to prevent others from entering. Richard stood by Tang Tian's side and reported all the details of his investigations. He knew that the boss viewed this matter with extreme importance. He was extremely interested in this dusty piece of history, and spared no effort to investigate and finally found many clues. All of these clues made him puzzled, and Richard faintly felt that there was an astonishing secret hidden within. Xia's words further confirmed Tang Tian's guess. The Green Sea of Mist was most likely the work of a few generations for it to reach such a scale. Xia only felt a formless pressure, causing her heart to tremble. Mr. Meng Nan's aura was becoming stronger and stronger. In the past she and Meng Nan were friends, but now in front of Mr. Meng Nan, she felt as though she was facing Master Suo Bai. Sister Ling, Ting Ting's expression was cold as she shook her head. If Sister Ling comes to our clan as a guest, I will definitely welcome you with open arms. As for other people, I'm sorry, but we don't welcome them. Seeing that Tang Tian was listening attentively, Richard became even more excited. Southern Islands. I might have a way. Xianxia finally grabbed the opportunity and said. This time she had volunteered to be Tang Tian's guide, to avoid the cleansing in by Sha City. But that did not mean that her task was easy. Before she left White Sand City, the Continent Lord and Master Suo Bai had specially instructed her to help Mr. Meng Nan. Even her father had made a special trip here. The keepsake in Xia's hands was a jade bamboo board. On it was an engraving of a water bottle. I'll have to trouble you to deliver these items to the various patriarchs. Whether we meet or not, I believe that the various patriarchs have their own ideas. I'll wait here for news. The battleship paused and quickly decelerated. Everyone knew that they had reached the Southern Islands. About 5 years ago, during the previous promise of 10 years, the disciples of the 5 clans sent gifts to the Continent Lord. Because the one who came was a lady, Xianxia was the one in charge of receiving them. After interacting for a few months, their relationship was not bad, and before she left she gave Xianxia a keepsake, saying that if she ever comes to the Southern Islands she can be a guest at her house. Maybe we can ask her to pass a message inside. Tang Tian laughed. Aquarius constellation. Xianxia was filled with admiration. Even as an outsider she listened to Richard's narration with relish. But when she saw the item in her hands she was stunned. The churning green sea of mist continuously swept up all sorts of strange things. The other strange creature was only the size of a fist. It had a single blood-red eye and pale white teeth that looked like 2 rows of saw teeth. Its body flowed with a black liquid, and when it dripped into the sea of mist, it would transform into black smoke. These creatures appeared in a large group, and even though they were far away they gritted their teeth at Tang Tian and the rest. Below them they converged into a dense black cloud, but they seemed to be able to leave the green sea of mist, causing everyone to relax. The dark green sea of mist had no end in sight. Tang Tian did not immediately send people to call Crane and Ling Su over, but decided to take a look first. Tang Tian's gaze landed on Xianxia. Xianxia was startled and immediately shook her head. Of course not. But very quickly Tang Tian started to ponder. He had a Blood Meridian's laboratory under him and knew a little about poisons. She said that on the cliff there is a pavilion and beside it is a small stream, and that by throwing the keepsake into the stream she will receive it. Xianxia said. Ting Ting. Xianxia saw who it was and revealed a smile. At the same time she heaved a sigh of relief. Richard guessed that the boss definitely knew the secret, but he did not dare to ask. Behind the 5 southern island families, the Honorable Martial Continent was faintly discernible. As the strongest overlord, the Honorable Martial Continent had complete control over the entire western region. Tang Tian and the rest quickly found the pavilion. Between the 2 mountain peaks, there was a bare cliff. The pavilion was extremely old, as though it could collapse at any time. Beside the pavilion there was a small stream that flowed. Tang Tian finally understood why no one dared to make a move on the southern islands. The sea of green mist was practically a natural barrier. Without a guide rushing in recklessly, other than leaving their lives behind, there was no use. Richard braced himself and said, I don't know. What are the 5 families? Tang Tian suddenly asked. How do you contact your friends? Tang Tian asked curiously. The sea of green mist had completely enveloped the southern islands. In the past 200 years, the southern islands had been managed by the 5 families like an iron bucket. Adding the natural barrier of the southern islands, even silver-grade armies did not dare to enter. The warriors of the 5 families were extremely brave, and at that time when White Sands was able to resist the pirates, the 5 families had contributed greatly. Everyone's face changed. The energy undulation just now was shockingly strong. It was as though 2 silver-grade saints were fighting with all their might. Furthermore, Crane and Sagittarius constellation had a deep relationship, while Ling Su inherited the inheritance of Aries constellation. Tang Tian had forgotten the surname of the Aquarius constellation, and simply called them the Aquarius family. Tang Tian was filled with anticipation. The 12 ecliptic palaces were all tyrants in Heaven's Road. Every family had a long history and he was curious what would their main families look like. Yi, Li, Wei, Yu and Zhang families, their insignia are very interesting. The Yi family's insignia is a scale. The Li family's insignia is a crab. The Wei family's insignia is an archer. The Yu family's insignia is an Aries, while the Zhang family's insignia is an Aquarius. How do we contact them? Tang Tian asked. Richard carefully looked at Tang Tian, who was listening attentively. But Richard was slightly worried because they were not going to fight, so they did not bring an army and only brought Xianxia's 2 small groups. Xianxia was speechless. She never thought that it would be such a result. As expected of the 12 ecliptic palaces. Seeing that Ting Ting's expression had calmed down, Xianxia anxiously said, "This is Mr. Meng Nan. I am accompanying Mr. Meng Nan. Mr. Meng Nan is the Continent Lord's esteemed guest, and wishes to visit the 5 families. The 5 families of the southern islands have migrated here, concealed their identities and isolated themselves from the world. The environment of the southern islands is extremely vile, with barren hills and unruly rivers, wild beasts roaming about and poison mist everywhere. It is said that when the Continent Lord asked the 5 families what rewards they wanted, the 5 families took the initiative to request for the southern islands, and rejected a fertile land. At that time the Continent Lord saw that the 5 families were firm, and decided to give the entire southern islands to the 5 families, since the southern islands had no master. The 5 families spent countless manpower and resources, and after 3 generations they finally had some results. If outsiders were to accidentally enter the southern islands, they would most likely lose their lives. The vile environment became the most natural barrier for the 5 families, and the southern islands became the most mysterious place in the White Sands. But every 10 years the 5 families will send their disciples to the Patriarch's residence, and offer all sorts of treasures. Even the Continent Lord cannot interfere with the matters of the 5 families. The southern islands are a system of their own, and outsiders do not know much about them. Their temperament and customs are also rarely known. Tang Tian nodded his head. That's a good idea. The black spiky life form with a body of over 200 m long, twisted and turned along with the sea of mist, causing everyone's hair to stand. As long as anything touched it, it would coil around like a snake, quickly binding the other party tightly. The black spikes would pierce deeply into the other party's body. And after experiencing the harsh environment of the southern islands, the current warriors of the 5 families were untouchable in the White Sands continent. Luckily, the disciples of the 5 families rarely went out and rarely fought with others. Flying out of the warship, the legendary southern islands entered everyone's eyes, but everyone's faces were not good. A green-robed beautiful young lady was filled with joy, but when she saw Tang Tian and the rest by Xia's side, her face was filled with caution. Especially when she saw Tang Tian's black arrow warship, her face changed. White bones were constantly being tossed into the air by the churning mist. The sheer number of them was shocking to behold. Suddenly, a beast's roar came out from the depths of the green sea of mist. The intense energy undulation struck out like a hurricane, causing the green sea of mist to become extremely berserk and churn endlessly. Interesting. Ting Ting subconsciously took the things that were thrown over. Richard's investigations were extremely thorough, and he had everything at his fingertips. I wonder if the Bottle family in the green sea of mist is very rich. The 5 southern island families hated strangers and had never heard of the southern islands receiving guests. The previous Continent Lord had once planned to visit the 5 southern island families to sightsee, but who knew that he would be mercilessly rejected by the 5 families. At that time the Continent Lord had met with a rebuff, and could only drop the matter dejectedly. Xia looked at Tang Tian, waiting for him to make the decision. The bamboo board that was thrown into the stream was sent to the peak of the mountain, and disappeared into the green sea of mist. Sister Ling, are you bringing people to attack my family? Ting Ting's expression became cold. I am the enemy of the honorable martial continent. But along the way she didn't have a chance to show off. Richard's investigation could be said to be thorough, and his knowledge was profound. He could always find the corresponding content of those inconspicuous incidents in history. Chapter 647. Greetings, grandmother. Greetings, 4 grandfathers. Seeing the appearance of the 5 patriarchs, Tang Tian was surprised. He never thought that the 5 patriarchs would be so old. Thus he sweetly greeted them. Since he was young, Tang Tian did not have any burden. Towards the elderly, Tang Tian was extremely polite. 5 figures floated down from the sky and stopped in front of the cloud path. All of them had smiles on their faces. A look of surprise flashed past their eyes. Tang Tian's youth had surprised them. Tang Tian's words immediately made the 5 of them happy. Wei Tingting laughed bitterly in her heart. Just at that moment she suddenly heard a clear voice coming out from the sea of green mist, and was immediately roused. "Welcome to the southern islands." Rumble, 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 the muffled sound came out from the depths of the sea of green mist. If I did not see it with my own eyes, I would definitely not believe that there would be a spirit object that is so compatible with me as though it was made for me. Yi Feng Lai's expression was intoxicated, but his voice was as cold as ice. Zhang Yingru and the other 4's smiles became even wider. They had never seen Tang Tian before, and only felt that the child in front of them was obedient and polite, and they could tell that he had a good upbringing. The 5 of them were all old people and they loved this kind of child the most. The landlord does not have any surplus. Yi Feng Lai's cold and calm voice came out. To casually give out 5 spirit objects, the Honorable Martial Continent does not have so much wealth for them to squander. In front of him was a silver spear that flickered with a cold light. Tang Tian's tone was filled with impatience, as though he was extremely dissatisfied with the current situation. His voice rolled out like a torrent, causing the sea of green mist behind Wei Tingting to churn endlessly, and was split into 2 by a gigantic force, revealing a wide cloud path that extended far into the distance. The snow-white cloud path in the dark green sea of mist was spotlessly white. Lingxia was dumbstruck. She thought that she had heard wrongly. This. Was this the same Iron Blood Overlord who had killed countless of people and fought bloody battles without retreating? Of course it is. Richard immediately said, "Giving 1 is enough. Giving 5 truly too extravagant." Li Yutao was the only female out of the 5 patriarchs. She said solemnly, "These spirit objects are completely different from the Sacred Saint Galaxy's spirit objects. They are more like the Honorable Martial Continent's spirit objects." Which soul object was not theirs? Both of them felt their hearts ache. Outside the green mist sea. "It's amazing." Yi Feng Lai's eyes flickered with radiance. His appearance was bold and powerful, but in reality his thoughts were meticulous and he had always been insightful. He fiddled with the item in his hand. It was a silver scale that was extremely exquisite and small. What was surprising was that it was emitting a strange fluctuation. The others nodded. Wei Da's words were what everyone was thinking. Besides, we also need something to change the current situation. What 12 ecliptic palaces, what conflict of interest. At this moment he had thrown everything beyond the 9 heavens. In any case she had never seen it since she was born. Even if the White Sands Continent Lord personally came, he would definitely not receive such treatment. The patriarchs of the 5 clans gathered together, each of them wearing an incomparably solemn expression. Although the 5 clans were as close as a family, such a gathering of family heads would only occur when something extremely important had happened. "Don't worry, we'll replenish our manpower later." In her hand was a small and exquisite silver shield. The surface of the silver shield was embossed with a crab pattern. She caressed the patterns on the surface of the shield. The faint undulation caused the energy in her body to involuntarily respond. It's still a little kid, how can the family feel at ease letting him come out alone?" Li Yutao was the first to ask. "Then let's meet," Zhang Yingru said. "Open the doors and welcome our esteemed guest." "Extravagant?" Tang Tian regained his senses. "It's not extravagant at all, 1 for each family." Richard could not help but ask, "Boss, isn't our expenditure a bit too much?" The 5 families and the Honorable Martial Continent had fought for so many years, but they were not exterminated and were extremely familiar with each other. No one knew better than them what methods the Honorable Martial Continent had. Zhou Xian was stunned. "Boss." Suddenly Tang Tian thought about his mother's gentle gaze and his warm palms. "Seriously, it's not easy for such a young child to go out. We need to choose some intelligent bodyguards. He's so stupid." Honorable Martial Continent. Wei De sneered. Although the Honorable Martial Continent's spirit objects are the best in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, but compared to these spirit objects they are still lacking. Tang Tian felt that it was good, although he was not very smart, but his intuition was sharp. The care and concern of his 5 grandparents made him feel a warmth that he had not felt for a long time. Zhou Xian and Richard almost spat out blood. The 5 families had a long history and strict etiquette. The disciples and juniors were all well behaved, and when they saw the 5 of them, they would tremble with fear and be extremely careful. Wei Da's archery attainments were profound, but he did not have the calmness of an archer, and his temper was like fire. That's right. Richard was the first to agree and snorted, just those 5 spirit objects can buy an entire continent. And it is definitely not a small continent. Your noble side is too arrogant. Yu Xinji's usual unhurried tone caused everyone to become silent once again. The recent situation in the southern islands was extremely bad. They never thought that their performance would be seen by the 5 old men and would actually be criticized. Wei Tingting looked at the 5 patriarchs in a daze, her face filled with shock. She had thought that the 5 families would agree to let them enter the southern islands, but she never thought that they would receive such treatment. The 5 patriarchs went out to welcome them at the same time, the misty sea opening the door, the disciples guarding the cloud path. This was the highest form of etiquette for the 5 southern island families. 1 for each family. Yi Fenglai closed his eyes as though he was immersed in the beautiful undulation. The other 4 also had smiles on their faces and cupped their hands towards Tang Tian at the same time. Disciples dressed in different colors flowed over like flowing water. They separated into 2 sides of the cloud path. Richard felt that he was in a state of confusion. Richard had long experienced the boss's extravagance, but the amount of money he had spent today still made him feel shocked. Everyone else laughed. It was true, no matter how generous the honorable Martial Continent was, they could not take out 5 outstanding spirit objects as bait. Welcome our esteemed guest. The world was not only filled with darkness and blood, it was not only filled with open and veiled struggles, it was not only filled with deceit, there was also light and warmth, and the simple care that came from the bottom of one's heart. Seeing that Tang Tian was surrounded by the 5 old men and old ladies, he would occasionally raise his innocent face and answer them cutely. Richard and the rest were completely petrified. The sudden care was like a ray of sunlight that pierced through the clouds. He had obtained a silver bow. The Wei family's archery was passed down through generations, and upon obtaining the silver bow he became excited. He thought about Ghost Claw, the silent and stern figure, and the care and expectations he had for himself. It did not matter how much it was, warmth always healed the heart. That's right, that's right. Ling Xia felt that the upper limit of the word tyrant in her mind had been refreshed. The sacred Saint Galaxy was not heaven's road. The spirit objects here were rare, and for such high-quality spirit objects, all of them were priceless. The 2 of them were not worried that the 5 southern island families would reject them. What a joke, 5 spirit objects, and all of them were high-grade spirit objects. Luckily Su Jin was not present, if not his eyes would immediately turn green. Richard had seen many spirit objects at his son's place. All of them were provided by the boss for his son's research. But the grade of the 5 spirit objects were much higher than those spirit objects, and all of them were of extraordinary quality. The obedient young man in front of me. Zhang Yingru's voice was trembling. The legend of the past had always been recorded in the history of the various families. This legend had never been proven. The 13 families had also spent countless of effort, and even sent people to infiltrate the honorable Martial Continent, but the information they obtained was always vague, as though it was just a legend. Ling Xia did not say anything, but the expression on her face showed that she was equally dissatisfied with their treatment. Zhang Yingru raised his eyebrows and laughed. Esteemed guests have come, we are late, please forgive us. After the thunder, countless of disciples shouted in unison. The other 4 patriarchs all stood up at the same time. What do you guys think? The one who spoke was an old man with white hair. He was Zhang Yingru, the patriarch of the 5 families Zhang family. He held on to a silver vase as though he was afraid that it would fly away. Quickly come in, you must be hungry, I made you wait for so long. Everyone became quiet. Why were the 13 families being chased by the honorable Martial Continent? Other people might not know about it, but how could they not know? This guy, when was the last time something like that happened? Yu Xinji said slowly. Look at the insignia on it, the Aries Yu family from the start till now. This Aries insignia has never appeared anywhere else. The Aries silver spear, there are no such coincidences in the world. Richard's expression froze in his heart. His boss was strong, tyrannical, decisive, and ruthless. No matter where he was, he would be a hero. The unfamiliar warmth caused Tang Tian to be in a daze. Tang Tian turned and shouted at Wei Tingting, "Hey, are you going to meet your patriarch or not? If not, I'll leave." Ling Xia, who was by the side, had a distressed expression. Wei snorted. "If not, why would those assholes from the Honorable Martial Continent think of ways to kill us?" I'm afraid the Honorable Martial Continent had already received the news. Humph, the Honorable Martial Continent's research on spirits suddenly had a breakthrough, most likely because of that. She suddenly turned her head and looked at Tang Tian. Her thoughts were clear, although the 5 spirit objects were priceless, but it was definitely not enough for her 5 grandfathers to treat them with such respect. Along the way he had been as resolute as steel. He had been burning. He had been shouting unwillingly. He had been struggling and fighting. Unknowingly, he had already gotten used to the continuous battles, used to the danger, used to the cold blades, and used to the salty taste of blood. Could it be a trick of the Honorable Martial Continent? Liu Tao was hesitant. The relationship between people could be complicated and intertwined with each other, but it could also be simple. His nose felt sour, but he allowed his smile to blossom even more brilliantly. No one felt that Tang Tian's dissatisfaction was wrong. Even Wei Tingting felt the same. "Is it?" Tang Tian asked casually, his expression showing that he did not take Richard's words to heart. Throwing away the benefits, Tang Tian's smile became even more pure. Could it be that the ancestors of our 13 families that went missing did not die, but went to another place to spread their branches? Stupid and stupid. Chapter 648. Before he finished speaking, a loud rumble resounded, and everyone's expression changed drastically. Not long ago they finally had a breakthrough. Annoyed, Tang Tian threw out a bronze artifact. Scram. The others were envious and were also trying to think of a solution. Yilao Heir's method was definitely not going to work. Yilao Heir was still a man of integrity. After he obtained the soul object, he guarded the door as a door god, helping Tang Tian block the others. Yilao Heir's strength was valiant. There were only a few people who could beat him. Meng Nan was a thorn in Lady Rose's side. If not for him, their first target would have been successful. Meng Nan's background was mysterious. He was strong, his style was tenacious, his wealth was robust, and he did things without restraint. She had just set up a trap, and Meng Nan was about to come to the Southern Islands. Wasn't that a heaven-sent opportunity? No one would pay attention to the Southern Islands. This was an opportunity. Madame Ro let out a soft sound as her beautiful eyes lit up. What is it for the 5 patriarchs to come out to welcome us? All of the generals present revealed fanatical looks. They were the backbone of the Honorable Martial Continent, and were extremely loyal to it. At this moment, Madame Ro's figure was exceptionally tall in their eyes. Their faith was incomparably firm. Lady Ro closed her eyes and pondered. When Madame Ro saw the army that was gathered, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. Madame Ro's lips twitched, but she didn't say anything. She had done what she could, and the rest was up to fate. She did not understand battle formations, so she could not personally command. All she could do was set up and boost morale. Only the light. We await your triumphant return. Lady Ro bowed respectfully without a hint of arrogance on her face. An Aries constellation bronze star treasure flew out. Lady Ro, who had just concealed herself upon hearing that Meng Nan was also coming to the Southern Islands, and bringing very few people, her heart was moved. Good chance. If Meng Nan entered the Southern Islands, wouldn't he be able to kill him as well? All the soldiers roared in unison. Their faces were filled with incomparable fanaticism. The Honorable Martial Continent had 2 targets in the White Sands continent. The gentle and soft voice made people's hearts itch, but everyone present stood ramrod straight with solemn expressions, not daring to relax even a little, just like those old-fashioned soldiers. Only their black trench coats and the bright red skull pattern on their backs indicated their identity as pirates. If this guy was still alive, he would have to take responsibility for this result. He didn't expect this guy to die. His luck was pretty good. In order to stabilize the morale of the army, Lady Ro had to help him apply for a pension. When Master Su lost his life, she knew that the situation could not be reversed, so she set her sights on the Southern Islands. The White Sands continent had just stabilized, and with the complicated matters, Sua Bai's army placed more attention on eliminating the remaining pirates. Mengnan, do you dare to come out and fight with me? The thin-skinned Yi Lao heir changed his method. Wasn't he just trying to make himself known? Does your father know how much you flatter him? However, the boss was too gullible. When the last general walked out of the room, Lady Rose sat back on her soft chair, her face showing signs of fatigue. Yu Qingyi ran in front of Senator. Only then did Shursen understand that she was talking about him. Shursen felt a bit of admiration. These old soldiers did indeed have some hidden injuries in their bodies because they lacked medicine back then. He did not expect this guy to be able to see through them with a single glance. Tang Tian felt that his recent leisurely life was pretty good. He enjoyed the peace very much. His first goal was to control the White Sands, and make it the honorable martial continent's fulcrum to enter the southern region. If he could not control it, then he would destroy it and cause the White Sands to descend into chaos, and then the chaos would spread to the entire southern region, causing the various continents of the southern region to descend into chaos, splitting and exhausting the strength of the various continents. The Li family's 4 sisters' dessert skills were top-notch. Yi Lao heir was extremely pleased. He carried the treasures and left. The scout reported respectfully, "Yes, Xianxia acted as a guide. She has a good relationship with Wei Ting from the southern islands." Meng Nan handed a few things in, and not long later, the 5 patriarchs came out to welcome him. Shursen felt that the price was slightly high, but to be able to heal the hidden injuries in his body, he was still happy. Wei Ting obtained the spirit object, but everyone was still watching as they did not understand the situation. But Wei Hao also obtained one, and all of the young disciples' eyes immediately turned red. We cannot let the Wei family take all the benefits. Everyone's spirits were roused. The first-class loyal martyr was the highest reward for sacrificing a soldier, and most importantly, his family would receive the best care. They were all soldiers of the honorable martial continent, and were secretly disguised as pirates, doing shady business in the dark, and the honorable martial continent would definitely not acknowledge their existence. Tang Tian spent the past 2 days comfortably. He did not hide anything and told them everything he knew. After that, the 5 patriarchs started to discuss behind closed doors, and did not come out for a few days. "It's been hard on you," Lady Rose said warmly. Tang Tian could not stand his eagerness. "I have never heard of Sagittarius constellation being so thick-skinned. How can he be so thick-skinned?" Tang Tian, who was defeated through a bronze star treasure to Wei Hao, "Don't appear tomorrow." Seeing the boorish-looking burly man in front of him blinking his bright eyes with a fawning look, Tang Tian said helplessly, "Old Wei, I am not thirsty at all." "Not thirsty? Then are you hungry? My skill in roasting deer is rather good," Wei Hao said with a flattering look. The dessert was extremely delicious, and Tang Tian almost swallowed his tongue. "Brother Meng, drink some water. This is mountain spring water that I brought from afar. It is very sweet." Out of the 5 families, only the Zhang family was left. Zhang Nanyan walked up confidently. "I have a business deal." Although she had suffered a huge loss at Meng Nan's hands, Lady Ro was extremely confident in the battle. "That's right, only they can save the world. Only the honorable martial continent can bring peace to the world. We will definitely win." All of the generals shouted. "That is a spirit object. When a man dies, the lamp will go out. Do not gossip," Lady Rose said indifferently. Lady Rose's expression was impassioned. Her words were different from her usual gentle and soft voice, and had a sonorous tone. Just as he left, the 4 sisters of the Li family carried fresh and piping hot desserts into Tang Tian's room. Not long later, the 4 sisters each took a spirit object and left happily. Out of the group of people, one person stood out. "I have just received news. Master Su's pirate group has been completely annihilated." The servant stuck out her tongue and kept quiet. Seeing that Lady Ro was tired, she immediately ran over and gently massaged Lady Ro's shoulders. Lady Rose stood up and stared at the soldiers in front of her and said solemnly, "Everyone, do not worry, the higher-ups will not forget everyone's sacrifice and sacrifice. Everything that we have done is for the Sacred Saint Galaxy. The Sacred Saint Galaxy has been in conflict for too long, heroes have stood side by side and wars have never stopped. How many innocent people have died in the chaos of war, how many families have been destroyed, the blood has flowed for too long, and it is time for it to end. Only with a strong ruler, Only with the light of the honorable martial continent shining in every corner of the sacred Saint Galaxy, can the world be at peace and people can live and work in peace. Lady Rose's face revealed a look of sorrow and sighed. I never thought that Master Su would actually meet with misfortune. The heavens are jealous of him. But his contributions will not be erased. I will report it, and help him obtain the title of first-class loyal martyr. The fleet that was hiding in the darkness quietly moved, revealing their sinister looks. Only with blood and fire can we restore peace. Burn the bodies of our brave men with blood and fire as swords, we can break through the dark clouds and see the light. Only the light can illuminate the land. The backbone of the pirates were all carefully selected elites of the honorable martial continent, and their strength far surpassed ordinary pirates. They saw that the situation was unfavorable and thus chose to conserve their strength. The 5 types of laws were interconnected and had many variations. Tang Tian could not be bothered, since he had said what he needed to say. How they chose was up to them. I do not dare to alarm them, they are too far away, and this subordinate is unable to see clearly. The scout lowered his head, his heart trembling. Lady Ro was an important intelligence officer, and quickly gathered the pirates that had been infiltrated by the honorable martial continent, and quietly gathered them at the southern islands. She wanted to take the chance when Suo Bai and the rest reacted and take care of the 5 southern island families. Although time was tight, but she arranged everything in an orderly manner. Although the pirate alliance was defeated, but the few pirates that had been infiltrated did not suffer much losses. After so many years, the honorable martial continent had suffered countless setbacks in the Green Sea of Mist. But the blood and sacrifices were not for naught, and how to break the Green Sea of Mist had become one of the most important research projects of the honorable martial continent. The reason why the 5 southern island families were hard to conquer was not because they were strong, but because they had operated the Green Sea of Mist for so many years, and the current Green Sea of Mist was filled with poison, with all sorts of desolate beasts and venomous insects. But the strongest were the 5 top martial artists of the 5 southern island families in the past 200 years. Using their bodies as a guide, they were connected by laws. They entered the southern islands. Is there any news of Master Su? Lady Rose suddenly asked. Master Su was the skinny and tall man, and when she left the White Sands she did not travel with him. If she sacrificed herself, her family would be properly taken care of, and they would not have any worries. The second goal was to destroy the 5 southern island families. The good situation was destroyed. Master Su is too useless, if not, why would Lady Ro need to clean up the mess? The servant muttered, her face filled with disdain. Yu Qingyi came to Tang Tian's door. Ignoring Yi Lao Er's murderous gaze, he spoke out. Your esteemed subordinate has an old injury. I have some medical knowledge and can give it a try. Wei Hao was Wei Tingting's brother. Ever since he knew that Wei Tingting had obtained a spirit object from Tang Tian's hands, he ran over every day to fawn over her. Since bronze treasures were not worth much, he casually gave one to each of them. Lady Rose sat on the black soft chair, her warm and smooth arms supporting her chin, her mouth hung a charming smile. Lady Ro was helpless. She did not expect that her own comrades would be so useless. She had thought of He Ying's defeat, and thus plotted a plan to lure the pirates into the continent. She did not expect that Master Su would leave a hidden danger, and before Lei Erfu died he left a clue for Suo Bai, and at the crucial moment the allied armies were attacked by Suo Bai. Allying with the pirates, they wanted to borrow their strength, but did not expect Lien Bojun to betray them. Lady, we will definitely win. The servant beside her waved her fists excitedly. But, ever since he casually gave Wei Ting a bronze treasure from Sagittarius constellation, Tang Tian's side became lively. The expected punishment did not come, and the scout heaved a sigh of relief. Lady's temper was much better than Master Su's. Yi Lao Er stood outside Tang Tian's door, shouting for 2 hours. He was full of energy, just his voice alone could cause the roof tiles to fly. Now that the first goal had failed, the only thing that could be accomplished was the second goal. I will definitely not appear. Wei Hao grabbed the bronze treasure, turned and ran. Chapter 649. Honorable Martial Continent. How strong are they? Tang Tian asked. The Honorable Martial Continent's army was unstoppable. They slowly and steadily pushed forward. Even with Suo Bai's first army, they were unable to stop the army, much less the 5 southern island families who did not have an army. The battlefield was extremely intense, but they knew that the honorable Martial Continent had found a way to deal with them. On the battlefield, the giant ancestral spirits were not at a disadvantage. But as time passed, their disadvantage would only increase. Because the Green Sea of Mist was the source of the giant ancestral spirits' power, the warships behind the warships were frantically destroying the Green Sea of Mist. Wei Tingting did not expect Tang Tian to ask such a question at such a time, and was startled. Very strong. Master, that group of pirates. Xiu Xian said solemnly. Another giant figure stood up from the Green Sea of Mist. Its gigantic palm waved towards the Green Sea of Mist, causing the Green Sea of Mist to surge, like a whale sucking in rivers. The surging mist transformed into a spear in its hand. Wei Hao also stood up, his expression sinister. Fight it out. Tang Tian also felt a headache. He initially came here to seek help, hoping to befriend an ally. But he never thought that not only would he not obtain an ally, he would instead become a nanny, bringing a group of immature brats to escape. Tang Tian was annoyed by the ruckus and bellowed, "All of you shut up." Tang Tian did not explain and only shouted, "All of you stand further away." The Honorable Martial Continent's wealth and overbearingness was the same as the Honorable Martial Temple, to be so high profile even though they were pirates. Tang Tian's eyes suddenly saw the bronze bow in Wei Tingting's hands. It was the bronze star treasure that he had given her. The ground shook. The roars of the desolate beasts caused the sea of mist in the distance to surge endlessly. The intense energy undulations swept out like a hurricane. The dust that was produced covered the sky, causing it to darken as though it was the end of the world. One after another, figures soared into the sky, like moths flying into a flame. That's it. Tang Tian pointed to the bronze bow in Wei Tingting's hands. The hollow face revealed an indescribable sense of familiarity. The family heads who were alarmed had a change in expression. No more than half an hour. Xiu Xian gave an accurate number. He said in a low voice, "Master, this subordinate will bring up the rear." The silver Aquarius cabinet in Tang Tian's hand shook. Tears streamed down Yi Lao Heir's cheeks. That was his great-grandfather. His body entered the sea and his soul protected his descendants. Mei Xiao did not rush to the front. His thoughts were different from the other generals. From the start he did not think that the key to this battle was whether they could defeat the 5 southern island tribes, but whether they could defeat them all. Compared to him, Mei Xiao was dim and dull. Qiu Suhua was the same age as him, and was already in control of an area with outstanding military achievements. Yi Lao Heir's voice was hoarse. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot. The white balls of light that kept pouring down from the warship, that familiar aura, allowed them to immediately recognize who the culprits were. However, it was this unknown Mei Xiao who found a way to break through the Green Sea of Mist. Very few people knew that although he hadn't planned the invasion of the southern region, he was the one who had initiated it. Mei Xiao, who had just been promoted, volunteered to join the infiltration of the pirates. Tang Tian's mind seemed to be lit up by lightning. He blurted out, "Wei Tingting, how's the power of this bow?" Tang Tian laughed out loud. I've thought of a way. Are there any troops stationed here?" Tang Tian suddenly turned and asked Ling Xia. Tang Tian looked around coldly. Yu Qingyi's eyes were blurry. She immediately knelt down and kowtowed to the giant, the ancestor of the Yu family. Inside the warship, the sounds of crying could be heard. All of the young people's faces were ashen. The men were silently crying, the women were sobbing. Tang Tian never thought that the Honorable Martial Continent who had just lost in White Sands City would actually have such a powerful force. In the battlefield behind them, the Honorable Martial Continent was slowly gaining the upper hand. Although the Honorable Martial Continent's warships were being destroyed by the giant ancestor spirits, and there were people who were thrown into the Green Sea of Mist and transformed into spirits, but the number of giant ancestor spirits was decreasing. Everyone could only retreat. The warship was already packed with people, but they still tried their best to squeeze into a group. The Black Arrow warship was originally a small warship, but it was currently packed to the brim, and what was worse was that it was full, causing the Black Arrow warship's speed to drop by a lot. To escape, there was nothing worse than that. The pirates behind them were extremely fast. Everyone couldn't help but be disappointed. What kind of method was this? Although soul items were powerful, they couldn't play any role in a battle like this. Yi Lao Air glared at Tang Tian, but Yu Qingyi immediately stopped him and said to Tang Tian, "Mr. Meng, please forgive me. Yi Lao Air has a fiery temper and definitely did not mean to offend you." Because the green sea of mist was shrinking rapidly, the light balls were specially used to counter the green sea of mist. Everyone did not understand, but they retreated a few steps and opened up an empty space. What method? Shu Xian was the first to react, his eyes lit up. At most we will fight to the death. They did not understand what Tang Tian was trying to do, and only felt that their master's expression was extremely glaring. Let them follow Meng Nan in the future. Yi Fenglai laughed. There's no need to discuss anymore. Using their bodies to enter the sea, using their souls to protect their descendants. Damn it. But it was not an easy task to escape. Wait a minute. Where are we going? Zhang Yingru took a deep breath. Lady Ro had mobilized a total of 5 groups of pirates, and Mei Qianxiu was one of them. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The honorable martial continent's soldiers on the warship burned with white light as they struck towards the giant puppet. A gigantic palm extended out its 5 fingers and grabbed onto a warship. The warship in its palm was like a building block. The firepower of the warship bombarded the giant frantically. Kakaka. They want to escape, chase them. Mei Qianxiu's handsome face did not reveal any emotions. Seeing Shu Xian's determined face, Tang Tian's heart warmed. He patted Shu Xian's shoulder. You don't have to say those words in half an hour, we will definitely think of something. Can roughly double my fighting strength. Wei Ting said uncertainly, I have not researched it thoroughly. Bang, it shattered into countless of pieces that flew in all directions. Compared to the other generals who liked to use strong and heavy ships, the pirates under him were all nimble warships that moved like the wind. Inside the warship, Mei Qianxiu's expression was calm. Even in the honorable martial continent he was not famous. In the past few years, the honorable martial continent had been waging wars against the surrounding small continents, producing many famous generals. Mu Zhixia Moxin Chiu Hua Go Qing Wendao Jiaya. They were the 5 most famous generals of the honorable martial continent. The mountain-like figure crawled out from the green sea of mist. Its face could no longer be seen. Above its head were dark clouds. The sea of mist below it was only waist-high. It stood there majestically. The majestic aura was like a raging wave. The green sea of mist below it was like a gathering of tens of thousands of beasts roaring wantonly. The warship released a teeth-numbing sound. Ling Xia's face turned pale white. She shook her head. No, the Southern Islands was a land without a master in the past. Other than the 5 families, there are no other cities. Bang! It roared. It slapped the sea of mist with both of its palms and soared into the sky. Like a mountain being thrown out, it struck another warship. Explosions sounded out incessantly. The flames lit up the sky, and in the distance, a gigantic pirate fleet appeared. All of the young disciples knelt down. The scene in front of them had given them an incomparable shock. Since young, the adults had told them about the sacrifices of their ancestors, how they used their lives to protect their clansmen, and how difficult it was for them to live their current lives. To them it was like an ice-cold record in a book. It was revered, but it was as far away as history. Regiment after regiment of dazzling white light blossomed from the giant's upper body, but the giant did not feel it. Its body had already melted to its chest, and only its arms were enveloped in the congealed light aura. Tang Tian had long noticed the pirates. The green sea of mist is about to collapse. Yu Xianji said, we can't defend this place anymore. That expression. Arrogance, recklessness, ridicule, disdain, complacency, it was like a nouveau riche. A life and death struggle? Even if it's a life and death struggle, you need to have the strength to do it with just you guys. Tang Tian waved his hand impatiently. Enough. Shu Xian, how much longer before they catch up? Seeing grandmother Li Lutao's pleading face, the words of rejection were at the tip of Tang Tian's tongue, but he could not say it. The giant ancestral spirits and the warship were engaged in an intense battle. Regiment after regiment of flames exploded in the green sea of mist, causing thick smoke to billow. A voice filled with ridicule interrupted them. They had just retreated when the pirates moved. They circled around and avoided the main battlefield as their target was them. A few of the 5 races' warriors wanted to stop the pirates, but they were extremely agile. They pretended to charge to the left, but suddenly changed direction halfway. deceiving the warriors of the 5 races and chased after Tang Tian and the rest. The sacrifice back then had exchanged for 200 years of peace for the 5 races. The sacrifice and bravery that had been buried in history was presented in front of these youths, and they finally understood the determination, longing and sorrow contained in those words. He turned his face, suppressing the reluctance in his heart. He soared into the air and roared, "Those above 25, follow me to battle." The opponent was a fleet, and his own warship was not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Although the Black Arrow warship was a silver-grade warship, and could fight against a few of the enemy's warships, but the enemy's fleet actually had 3 silver-grade warships. The giant ancestral spirit's roar was extremely tragic, and showed that they were at their wits' end. Mei Qianxiu's series of actions after that displayed astonishing talent. Out of all the small groups, he was the first to completely infiltrate and control the pirates. After that, he led the pirates to plunder everywhere, winning every battle, and all the pirates at the bottom of the hierarchy trusted him. The seemingly random plundering was carefully selected by him, and along the way he collected a large amount of information and sent it back to the Honorable Martial Continent. They looked at Tang Tian in confusion. In truth, when the giant ancestral spirits were awakened, they knew that the 5 families were in the most dangerous situation. But at that moment, towering figures stood up from the sea of mist, blocking in front of them and protecting them. One by one, the giants awoke from their slumber and slowly stood up from the sea of mist. "Let's do it." Wei De agreed. He looked at Tang Tian's position from afar. Wei Hao and Wei Tingting's figures entered his vision and his gaze became gentle. "We will hold them back, let the young ones retreat," Liu Tao said without hesitation. The white light regiments that were released from the warship would explode upon entering the sea of mist. Wherever the white light swept past, the poisonous sea of mist would melt like snow. The green sea of mist was riddled with holes and it continued to shrink. The Honorable Martial Continent, these pirates were the Honorable Martial Continent in disguise. "Stand further away." The giant roared, the lower half of his body quickly melted, and the palm that grabbed onto the warship became even more intense. The gigantic explosion enveloped the warship, the light aura dissipated and only half of the warship remained. Chapter 650. Although everyone's expressions and gazes made young Tang extremely pleased, he also knew that the current situation was critical and that there was no time for him to be pleased. He clapped his hands hard to attract everyone's attention. Hiss hiss hiss. Retreat. Tang Tian could clearly feel that these secret treasures were rapidly being strengthened. The most obvious was the bronze star treasures. They rapidly transformed into silver star treasures. Some of the silver treasures had already started to have a faint layer of gold. Meng Nan had already used his victories time and time again to prove his strength, and to a man who had created miracles time and time again, no amount of attention could be placed on him. Tang Tian regained his senses. He suddenly felt that the scene in front of him was very familiar. Isn't this the scene that happened to the Sword Forest stronghold's 7 sets of armor? His adjutant looked at the sky outside. Torrents appeared in the sky, like the straight torrents formed by swords cutting through water. They swept across the sky at an astonishing speed. The only thing that made them suspicious was what happened inside the Black Arrow warship. Inside the pirate ship. With 1 artifact per person, the strength of the disciples of the 5 clans had greatly increased, but wanting to display their true strength was not so simple. Tang Tian was no longer a newbie on the battlefield. Especially after going through Bing's nurturing, he was very clear of the basic knowledge. It was impossible for them to form any kind of cooperation in such a short period of time. This also meant that they had completely surrounded the Black Arrow warship. The light was a phenomenon produced when the artifact was crazily and greedily absorbing energy. It was as if he could see a dazzling golden road. Everyone was shrouded in a ball of light. The ball of light was colorful and it illuminated the interior of the battleship. Suddenly Tang Tian slapped his head. What was going on? Sagittarius, Aries, you'll be the main attackers. Libra, you'll be in charge of control. Cancer, you'll be in charge of defense. What about Aquarius? How do Aquarius warriors fight? Tang Tian muttered to himself as he picked his treasures. Who is he? The adjutant beside him quickly gave him an accurate time. In about 15 minutes. Luckily our warship's speed is not bad. And luckily Meng Nan is soft-hearted. If not, it would be hard for us to catch up to the Black Arrow warship. Even the honorable Martial Continent doesn't have that many spirit objects. Everyone came to a sudden realization. Some of the more mature youths were moved. Could it be that Sir wished for each clan to rule over a continent in the future? Mei Xianxia did not expect that one day he would be able to witness a storm made entirely of energy. The energy storm grew taller and taller, quickly reaching a height of more than 500 meters. It was filled with an oppressive and intimidating power. All right. Tang Tian rummaged through the mountain of treasures and muttered to himself, Aquarius, Sagittarius, Cancer, Aries, Libra, luckily I have quite a few treasures. I will have to get more in the future. Luckily I still have more of the 12 zodiac temples and they are easier to buy. The energy that was even further away was pulled, and under the powerful attraction force, the torrent of energy was gradually pulled into an arc, and a vortex storm that reached the horizon was formed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the dead silence, they opened their mouths wide and stared blankly at the hill in front of Tang Tian. They had never seen so many soul objects. The energy released by the soul objects filled the air, and the energy inside the battleship was affected, showing a strange state of stillness. Mei Xianxia looked at the Black Arrow warship in shock. What happened inside? What are all these light auras? Tang Tian did not have any creativity in matching the 5 families with the 12 zodiac temples. He did it to make it easier for him to remember. How is that possible? The 3 silver-grade main cannons were not effective against the agile pirate warship, and were decisively abandoned by Tang Tian and Little Fool. The Black Arrow warship was equipped with 3 silver-grade main cannons, 6 honeycomb sword cannons, 3 silver-grade star conglomerate spears, and 12 heaven-binding ghost blades. Suddenly Tang Tian and Little Fool were startled by the sudden bright light auras. They stopped their discussions and were immediately stunned by the scene in front of them. All of these treasures were absorbing energy to strengthen themselves. Although they had already guessed what would happen, but when it really happened, everyone's faces were filled with joy and disbelief. Mei Xianxia and the rest saw an unforgettable scene. Not good. Master, our warship's energy is starting to dissipate. The adjutant's panicked voice pulled Mei Xianxia back from his daze and his face changed. The star treasures that Tang Tian took out were mostly silver-grade star treasures. When all of these silver-grade star treasures were awakened in the hands of the young disciples, the martial spirits inside the star treasures immediately sensed the dense energy around them, the unprecedented dense energy. Regardless of which direction the Black Arrow warship tried to break out from, there would always be people blocking them. This caused the entire honorable Martial Continent's confidence to soar. Although the scene in front of them was out of their expectations, but they firmly believed that they still held the advantage. Although the Black Arrow warship held the advantage in speed, but as long as they were entangled, they would lose their advantage in speed, and would be like a fish on the chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. Every warship stored an astonishing amount of energy, which was the source of the warship's power. All of the energy went through layers of seals and were extremely stable and safe. Tang Tian's expression froze. He did not say a word. He definitely could not say that. But in Heaven's Road, Aquarius martial artists were hailed as the wealthiest martial artists, and it was not wrong. The Black Arrow warship that was in the center of the storm continued to become brighter. The transparent and rapidly rotating energy storm was like a water screen, causing the Black Arrow warship's light aura to become even more unfathomable. Zhou Xian's underworld continent demonic mounts were perfect for the heavens-binding ghost blade. Suddenly the adjutant exclaimed, "Oh my God, what is that?" Mei Xianxia calmed down. The Star Treasure Hill's dazzling light aura lit up the entire warship, and also lit up everyone's sluggish expressions. Ling Xia's expression was extremely interesting. Her eyeballs were about to drop out. She had forgotten to breathe. Tang Tian's usual wealth had already made her feel as though she was going crazy, but all of the words that she could say in front of the small hill of spirit objects were all useless. But what happened next caused Tang Tian and Little Fool's face to change. "How much longer do we have to catch up?" Mei Xianxia asked. "What are you dilly-dallying for? Hurry up." Tang Tian opened his eyes wide and said impatiently, "Hurry up and familiarize yourself with the star treasures." Just that, the scale this time was even more astonishing. Energy storm. After picking out all of the treasures from the 5 constellations, Tang Tian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like it was enough. The Star Treasure Hill was separated into 6 small piles. Other than the 5 families, there was another pile for the underworld continent's demonic mounts, Wuxia and the rest. Tang Tian pointed to the 6 piles of star treasures and said, After retreating for over 100 kilometers, the energy dissipation finally disappeared, and at that moment the other pirate groups that had just finished their battle had all rushed over. The Black Arrow warship in front of them lit up with a dazzling light aura. The light aura was actually coming out from inside the warship. Xianxia was startled. He immediately looked forward and his pupils constricted. The Black Arrow warship was not known for its defense, but its hull was made of black mist wood. The black mist wood's light transmission was extremely weak, and for the light aura to actually come out from inside the warship, how bright was the light aura inside the warship? I am truly stupid. Such a simple method, how could I not think of it? Tang Tian kept the honeycomb sword cannon for himself. What is this? Wei Ting asked in confusion. They seemed to have awoken from a dream and rushed forward. Xianxia said resolutely the scene in front of him was too shocking. Although he did not understand what was happening inside the Black Arrow warship, but even the slowest person could sense the intense dangerous aura. Although the majority of the star treasures were thrown into Ursa Major Constellation's warehouse by Tang Tian, but for the sake of refining spirit treasures for Little Fool, he still brought many of them with him. Little Fool, who had just floated out, spoke to Tang Tian's ear expressionlessly. Throw money. Such a strong suction force. The adjutant was the same as Xianxia. The Black Arrow warship's performance was definitely the strongest among the small-scale warships, and of course its price was also very high. If he was leading the honorable martial army with luxurious equipment, Xianxia would have many methods, but he was leading pirates. For the sake of not attracting the attention of others, the pirates did not interact much with the honorable martial continent. Even the communication between Xianxia and his family was cut off. It was the first time Xianxia had seen the energy dissipation of a warship. Tang Tian was stumped. There was no concept of constellations in the sacred Saint Galaxy, so he forced himself to explain, it's equivalent to a continent. 2 pirate groups circled around from the sides. They avoided the terrifying energy storm and drew 2 arcs, blocking the Black Arrow warship's path. These energy torrents were like transparent arrows from all directions in the sky. They shot towards the Black Arrow warship like raindrops. Get everyone to prepare for battle. Meng Nan's fighting strength is not to be underestimated. Xianxia did not look down on him just because he had a fleet and the other party only had 1 warship. No one had any objections, but instead felt that the new names seemed to be made for them and were extremely suitable. Just that. Xianxia's heart was filled with an intense unease. Just at that moment he suddenly sensed something strange and muttered, energy flow, such an intense energy flow. The dense and berserk energy frantically surged into the warship. When over 1,000 star treasures were absorbing energy at the same time, the power produced was even more astonishing than the 7 sets of armor of the Sword Forest stronghold. In that moment everyone quietened down. A torrent of energy brushed past their warship, the sharp whistling sound causing the entire warship to tremble. This is Aquarius, this is Aries, this is Cancer, this is Sagittarius, this is Libra, and these are for the underworld continent's demonic mounts. 1 for each person. Countless of energy torrents surged forward like 10,000 arrows shooting into the warship. From today onwards, your 5 families will be split into 5 groups. Wei family, Sagittarius constellation. Li family, Cancer constellation. Yu family, Aries constellation. Yi family, Libra constellation. Zhang family, Aquarius constellation. The light aura of the warship became even more intense. The multicolored light auras became even denser. As for the silver star condensing spears, they were given to the Aries constellation's Yu family, who specialized in spear techniques. That's not right. Xianxia's eyes were wide open, his face filled with disbelief. They are absorbing energy. They are truly spirit objects. All the energy in the entire southern islands was being pulled, flowing into the 1,000 star treasures. Chapter 651. When the Black Arrow warship regained its tranquility, all of the pirates had long disappeared. The disciples of the 5 families who had just obtained new strength returned to the ruins of the southern islands. The scene was a mess. None of them were alive and all of them burst out crying. The other pirate groups had already started to retreat. The longer they stayed in an environment with negative energy pressure, the more damage they would cause to the warship. At that time they might not even have the chance to escape. That's right, I am unstoppable. Tang Tian, who had his arms raised up, suddenly laughed foolishly. Tang Tian did not care about the impact his words had on the others. Those words were not meant for them but for himself. After roaring for a while, he felt that the indistinct haze in his chest had been completely released, and he felt an indescribable clarity. In a battle, such a large-scale gathering of energy was usually the sign of a large-scale attack. It was Wei Hao, Yu Qingyi and the rest. They had just buried the corpses of their loved ones, and all of their eyes were red and swollen. They had coincidentally heard Tang Tian's words, and felt that they had spoken to the bottom of their hearts. Their red and swollen eyes once again glowed with light. They had found a new goal from their grief and sorrow. Zhou Xian opened his mouth. He wanted to say something but nothing came out. Furthermore, they were satisfied with the results of the battle. The 5 families of the southern islands were completely destroyed, and the remaining were just a bunch of brats. What could they do? Won't their future be forever burdened with hatred? Don't you think that it is too heavy for them? Xianxia could not help but ask. She was extremely dissatisfied with Tang Tian's reaction. Mei Xianxia calmed himself down and regained his composure. A cold glint flashed past his eyes. But what truly made Mei Xianxia choose to retreat was the Black Arrow warship. All of the energy in the air of the southern islands was absorbed by the Black Arrow warship. Such a vast amount of energy was condensed inside the warship. What exactly was inside? Please send more spies or something like that over. Normally speaking, the energy concentration inside the warship was much higher than the energy concentration in the air. But when the energy concentration in the outside world was too thin, it would produce negative energy pressure. The thin energy concentration in the air would produce a strong suction force, causing the energy inside the warship to be drained. Tang Tian, who threw all the work away, brought everyone back to the Shang continent. A bold plan appeared in Mei Qianxia's mind. In the sky, Zhou Xian could not help but ask, "Sir, should we go and help?" No. Unexpectedly, Tang Tian refused without any hesitation. He looked at the ruins below and said in a deep voice, "Their lives and futures were exchanged with the lives of their loved ones. No one can replace them when they bury their loved ones. Just like their hatred and responsibility, no one else is qualified to help them." Mei Qianxia gritted his teeth. Retreat. Very quickly, the envoys from the vast star continent arrived at the Shang continent for the second time. The others around him had the same expression. If he was leading the honorable martial army, Mei Qianxia would not be afraid. He did not even place Suobai's first army in his eyes, but he was leading a group of pirates. Even if the backbone were the elites of the honorable martial continent, but the standard of the soldiers at the bottom were too lacking compared to silver-grade armies. Live on with the part of your loved ones. Therefore all the projects required a lot of labor. The population of the Shang continent was originally pitiful. The vast star continent was in a terrible situation, and they needed to use their fastest speed to extinguish the fire in their backyard. Only by doing that could they focus on dealing with the other continents that were getting restless. Bing, who was about to go crazy, screamed in his heart, "Godlike young lad, you need to be brave." Tang Tian patted his chest loudly, his face full of pride. "Do you know what the godlike young lad's bravery is? It's not that I am not afraid. No one can be afraid forever, but even if I am afraid, I still have to fight. Trash will always find excuses for themselves, hiding and acting sad. Godlike young lad only knows how to rush forward. If you are not afraid, you will rush forward. If you are afraid, you will brace yourself and rush forward. If you are sad, you will bring your sadness and rush forward. If you are in despair, you will risk your life and rush forward. Saying that there is no hope, saying that it is a waste of energy, those are all excuses. You are about to die and you only know how to kneel on the ground and cry? Even the beasts trapped in cages struggle before they die, so why not rush forward? Godlike young lad, you should rush forward, never stop, rush, rush, rush." Upon thinking about that scene, Tang Tian's scalp went numb, and without hesitation he chose to return. They shed tears and buried the bodies of their loved ones. "Master, the energy concentration outside is too low." The adjutant's tone was filled with fear. "The negative energy pressure has already started to appear. We need to leave immediately. Do you think that I am very cold? Tang Tian did not turn his head, he did not shift his gaze, his tone remained calm. The lives that have died are already dead, the sacrifice has already been made, do not let the sacrifice become worthless. Bing was in urgent need of manpower. The Shang continent's series of actions had attracted the attention of the surrounding continents. Everyone was filled with curiosity towards the mysterious powerhouse that had suddenly emerged. The vast star continent needed an ally, a powerful ally, and only with a powerful ally could they intimidate the wolves around them. Obviously, the mysterious people of the Shang continent fulfilled that requirement. They had consecutively defeated 2 silver-grade armies of the vast star continent, and the strange sword forest stronghold, which clearly showed their strength. The reason why Tang Tian chose to leave was because he heard that his residence was currently overcrowded. The majority of the ladies that he had saved the last time were the young misses of the aristocratic families of the White Sands continent and the nearby continents. At this time, the various families all came to thank Tang Tian for saving their lives, and it was said that not only were Tang Tian's courtyard filled, even the nearby hotels were all filled. The conditions of the Shang continent were currently unable to keep up with their development. For example, the estuary was too small, and any slightly bigger boats were unable to enter. From a defensive point of view it was beneficial, but from a commercial point of view, it would greatly obstruct the flow of products. This sentence resonated in everyone's mind. Mei Xiao's face was extremely ugly, the energy concentration outside had become extremely thin to an unimaginable degree. The energy in the entire southern islands was practically plundered clean. Of course. Tang Tian snorted. Using one's life to exchange for hope is never meant for the weak. To not even have this bit of responsibility, to think that such a responsibility is too heavy, he should be buried here. Many of the families were extremely influential families, to the point that even the new continent lord had no choice but to put down his work and personally accompany them. In the future, the Shang continent's black gold and Heaven's Roads products would all be circulated out of the Shang continent. Childish and laughable words, childish and laughable actions, but it struck straight into their hearts. Other than that, they had to build a fort near the estuary. Without a fort guarding the estuary, the enemies could easily enter the Shang continent, and that was something that Bing could not tolerate. Mei Xiao bit his lips tightly, his face ashen. To them, the destruction of the warship was definitely a terrible thing. They were still in the White Sands continent, and the 3 silver-grade armies of the White Sands continent were basically intact. Mei Xiao had never heard of such a thing before. All the materials of the warship were materials that were rich in energy, and the loss of energy would cause permanent damage to the structure of the warship. Tang Tian's mouth was a godlike young lad, his face filled with arrogance, which was extremely laughable. And when he said rush, 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 he raised his arms up high, his face filled with malevolence as though he was roaring. The weakness of the vast star continent was already exposed. The surrounding continents were like a pack of wolves, waiting for the opportunity to pounce and bite. The desolate and barren Shang continent welcomed an unprecedented number of scouts. Mei Xiao's heart was filled with curiosity and fear. That's right, I am a godlike young lad. That's right, I will continue to rush. As for the families, Tang Tian threw them all to Qin Yuran. Qin Yuran was experienced, and with Aunt Chio's help, Tang Tian was assured. With him as her backing, adding on the relationship with the White Sands continent, he believed that no one would dare to do anything to her. Bing, who could even squeeze a mosquito dry, adding the calm and rational Crane, the vast star continent had no choice but to clench their teeth and pay a huge price. After leaving the southern islands, Tang Tian and the rest quickly met up with Tang Chao's swift army and skull unit. They immediately turned back and returned to the Shang continent, along with Su Jin. With such a huge commotion, if the White Sands continent did not have any reaction, then the other party would be idiots. Tang Tian looked at Ling Xia. That's right, it's heavy. They do not have the right to choose, regardless of whether they want to or not. Their future was exchanged with the lives of their loved ones, the hopes and expectations of their loved ones. They have to carry them and live on together. Bing's recent days were rather leisurely. After burning a few fires for the vast star continent, the vast star continent finally sensed danger, and sent people to negotiate. No one laughed, everyone was shocked. The good news was that there were many strong people who came to seek shelter, hoping to join the Shang continent's army. Master is right. The light aura in Yu Qingyi and the rest's eyes became brighter. Once they were entangled by silver armies, they would be in danger. How could the White Sands continent not sense such a huge commotion in the southern islands? Following that, the 3 silver armies of the White Sands continent would definitely chase after them. But their companion's choice was not to be blamed. To preserve their strength was equally important for their next move. Maybe this is a good opportunity. They will definitely not think that I will dare to counterattack at such a time. The feeling of failing at the last step was extremely terrible, but what made him even more worried was the changes happening inside the Black Arrow warship. He didn't know why, but this shocking change made him feel a faint sense of threat. In truth, the higher-ups of the vast star continent already understood that it was difficult for them to rely on their own strength to protect the vast star continent. Bing knew that there were definitely many spies from other powerhouses, but he did not let any of them go. What a joke, spies are also part of the workforce. I have been out for so long, it's time to go back. He clenched his fists tightly, his entire body brimming with power. The fighting spirit and fighting intent in his heart was overflowing. Bing was not strict. He knew that the reason why he could win was because of his luck. In truth, the strength he had was limited and was a classic example of being strong on the outside but weak on the inside. He did not care about the scouts and focused on training the soldiers under him. The energy storm lasted for a full 10 minutes. Xianxia was speechless. What exactly happened? Chapter 652. Everyone was training in silence. From time to time the boss would scream and fly out of the ball of energy, but after a while he would rush back in while howling, widening the estuary, building a fortress. The 2 of them immediately became alert. They looked at each other and tacitly squeezed to the front. Upon reaching the Shang continent, Zhou Xian saw the recruitment notices for soldiers, causing him to be overjoyed. This is the best chance to enter the Shang continent. After that, everything went smoothly. After entering the army, Zhou Xian saw many familiar faces and was a little surprised. They were all old opponents, old scouts of the various families. Zhou Xian was secretly surprised. Seems like everyone regards the Shang continent very highly. Although he was shocked, he did not show it on his face. Xie Yuan's face was covered in dust, and his body was much thinner than before. Only his eyes were brighter and more spirited, like the stars in the night sky, flickering with a terrifying light. As soon as they met up with Tang Tian, Lord Tang Chou announced an outrageous training plan. Everyone gritted their teeth and held on bitterly. Zhou Xian opened his palm. It was a small piece of black metal. The soldier's face was filled with excitement. Army, our army. In the beginning the boss was struggling like them, but soon he was like a fish in water, which was amazing. But what the boss did next made all of them speechless. Raymond calmed down. Why did you tell me? The army that had completed the recruitment did not undergo any training, and did not even enter the Sword Forest stronghold, as the entire army began to work on all sorts of projects. They were like a group of laborers working day and night. There were a few people who wanted to stir up trouble, but they were caught before they could do anything. He was no fool. If Zhou Xian could prove the value of the black gold, then this was undoubtedly an extremely valuable piece of information. There was no reason for him to share this information with anyone else. For a wily old fox like Zhou Xian to make such an illogical move, there must be some other reason. Then what if our 2 continents join forces? Zhou Xian suddenly threw out a question. They had wiped out 7 groups of pirates, big and small. But in the Sea of Energy, the pirates were considered to be gentle and pure existences. The unstable energy was like a ticking time bomb. They had no choice but to be alert at all times and did not dare to relax. As they flew closer, they noticed that there were people around the fleet, and there were a lot of them. No one dared to complain because the boss was also participating in the training. Following the fleet back to the Shang continent, he took the initiative to run into the raging energy tide to temper his body, took the initiative to detonate unstable energy balls to train his defense, took the initiative to attack the energy vortex. Zhou Xian and Lei Meng looked at each other. A bad premonition arose in their hearts. Since when did the Shang continent have other armies? Any weapon was worth a fortune. For the ambitious soldiers, there were also things that made their hearts palpitate. When they saw the Shang continent's estuary, all of them were overjoyed and felt a sense of survival. Damn it, we're here to be informants, okay? What is going on now? Zhou Xian's face was filled with anger. He had been sent to the Shang continent for close to half a month to scout for information. Don't relax. Of course, Zhou Xian knew that such a proposal wasn't something someone at Raymond's level could make. The reason why he dared to look for Raymond was because he had been instructed by his superiors. Zhou Xian said, the vast star continent underestimated their enemy. If they hadn't underestimated the enemy, they might have already taken it down. Master Tang Chou did not give them any chance to object. The only consolation was that it was not only the swift army that had to participate in the training, but everyone had to participate. The long-distance journey in the Sea of Energy was filled with danger and difficulty. The resistance that was everywhere, the constant energy corrosion, the hidden killing intent of the energy vortex, the raging energy tide that could appear at any time. Lei Meng was startled but immediately realized that was Zhou Xian's true goal. But he was quickly moved. The black gold proved that it came from the black rocks. Then the vast and boundless black desolate land was the boundless and boundless wealth. They did not know that under the dust and dirt on their faces, they would occasionally reveal an extraordinary sharp aura, bringing about an intense shock to other people. Everyone worked like crazy day and night. As scouts and spies, the most important thing was to be able to stand out in the crowd. They had no choice but to work even harder, to make themselves look no different from the other fanatical soldiers around them. Maintain your concentration. Army. Along the way, everyone suffered greatly. There were rewards for their work, and the rewards were high, causing many of the soldiers' eyes to turn red. It had to be said that Zhou Xian had thought it through carefully. The two continents were not adjacent to each other, and were in two different directions of the Shang continent. If they were to move out at the same time, they would form an angle, and the possibility of success was extremely high. Furthermore, the distance between the two continents was far, and there were no direct conflicts of interest, so the possibility of cooperation was higher. When the fleet flew closer, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. The fleet looked huge, but they were all transport ships and did not have any warships. In the beginning, they had no time to care about the synchronization rate. Everyone's faces were covered in dust, and they could not even maintain a basic formation table. They did not understand why they did not ride on the transport ships. The energy in the Sea of Energy would corrode their bodies. The unimaginably terrifying training was like a hard whetstone, sharpening Xianxia and the rest sharpness bit by bit. He methodically commanded the swift army, and when he saw the estuary he was still in disbelief they had actually reached the Shang continent. At the start, Xianxia and the rest continuously used their boss's example to raise everyone's morale, but very quickly, everyone kept quiet. Because everyone had underestimated their boss's perverse level. But regardless of anything, it was a good start. He finally saw a trace of hope to leave the goddamn construction site. The Swift Army, Skull Unit, Underworld Continent Demonic Mounts, Southern Islands 5 Constellations, all of them wanted to participate. But what was even more unexpected was that the master was extremely interested after hearing it, and decided to participate. This brand new labor army, other than the scouts, did not have many people who were dissatisfied. They did not need to fight, there was no danger, and they could still earn money, so why not? As for the hardship, what was not? The training was also extremely tough, and to the men who were willing to leave their homes, they did not care about the hardship as long as they could earn money. Even Zhou Xian, who was the most familiar with the Sea of Energy, upon hearing Master Tang Chou's request, his face turned ashen. But a pity, Zhou Xian was also under Master Tang Chou's command. But what happened next was completely out of their expectations. In that moment, everyone quietened down. But the majestic sword forest stronghold made their guesses seem like a joke. If the black gold was really extracted from the black stones, then it would be too extravagant to use the black stones to build such a magnificent group of fortresses. At the end of their vision, a small black dot was quickly enlarging. The scale of the fleet caused the two of them to have a change in expression. Lei Meng sneered. That was what the vast star continent thought at that time. Zhou Xian recognized the few of them at that moment. He felt a sense of sympathy to be caught like that. They were destined to end up in a tragic state. But what he did not expect was that the few of them were not executed, but were forced to continue working. It was just that the most dangerous positions did not have any rewards. Even the boss did not complain, so what qualifications did the others have to complain? If even the boss could accept it, why couldn't they accept it? They have money, what can you do about it? The one who spoke was Lei Meng. He was a scout from the East Divergent Continent, and was also an old veteran. Lei Meng was tall and sturdy. He looked crude, but his thoughts were extremely meticulous. Lei Meng replied cautiously, I will report this news. All of them were experts and were extremely familiar with all sorts of weapons. They dared to guarantee that they had never seen the black gold weapons anywhere else. Their sense of smell was much sharper than others, and many of them secretly guessed the relationship between the black gold weapons and the black rocks. All of these weapons caused the soldiers to go crazy. There were constantly people getting injured and then being sent to the transport ships. Yu Qingyi's medical expertise was outstanding, and with the star treasures, it was like adding wings to a tiger. The injured quickly recovered, and were once again sent back to the Sea of Energy to continue participating in the terrifying training. Who knows, there is no need to talk about such things. Lei Meng retorted. What's going on? Zhou Xian pulled over a soldier he was familiar with and asked. Zhou Xian said indifferently, I know a bit about refining weapons. Everyone noticed them and were startled. They did not know what was going on. Suddenly there was a commotion in front of them. The commotion became more and more intense. Zhou Xian and Lei Meng followed the crowd and flew out of the estuary. The stronghold at the estuary was already in its embryonic form, and they could directly enter the incomplete stronghold without being corroded by the Sea of Energy. Don't you feel that the defense here is a bit too weak? Zhou Xian's voice was filled with temptation. We only need 2 armies and it will be enough to take down this place. What truly attracted the interest of the scouts was the mysterious black gold weapons. Lei Meng's eyes immediately widened. Where did you get them from? Numb. Everyone was numb. The cruel thing about the world was not the existence of perverted beings, but the fact that perverts were by your side. The only thing that they were afraid of in the Shang continent was the Sword Forest stronghold, but to the vast black rock desolate beach, they could completely avoid the Sword Forest stronghold. In the period of time, although they had to work hard every day, but they still had some gains. For example, the Shang continent was rich, extremely rich. Just the salary they gave out every day was an astonishing number. A light flashed past Lei Meng's eyes. What proof do you have? The top 3 who performed the best, other than the high salary, were able to obtain the black gold weapons produced by the Sword Forest stronghold. These brand new weapons were the specialty of the Sword Forest stronghold and could not be seen anywhere else. They had excellent performance, outstanding power, and regardless of what weapon it was, they all had the best feel. Everyone were veterans. When their gazes met, they tacitly looked away and acted as though nothing had happened. Until the slogan, bravely surpass yourself, don't compare yourself to perverts, was shouted out, their low morale finally rose. Zhou Xian spoke softly. Don't you feel that the black gold weapons are very similar to the black rocks on the desolate beach? Furthermore, Master Tang Chao's demands were extremely harsh. Even in such a harsh environment, the army still had to maintain a high degree of synchronization, and there were numerous daily trainings that could not be neglected. Chapter 653. When Yang Ziqing heard He Siji's high evaluation of the underworld continent's demonic mounts, he immediately knew that they had let go of a big fish, and could not help but feel regret. All his attention was on the fleet that was constantly approaching. Only a few strong martial artists would view it as a form of training. But even these powerful martial artists would easily lose their lives in the Sea of Energy. It was Yang Ziqing's first time hearing of an army training in the Sea of Energy. Wasn't that seeking death? Wouldn't the soldiers rebel? The light regiments floating around the fleet were densely packed, with at least a few thousand people. A few thousand strong martial artists? Impossible. Isiji did not know how to continue. There was even a period of time where Yang Ziqing secretly guessed that Master Hisiji had suffered an injury on his face in the past, and was left with facial paralysis. Master Hisiji was an old soldier that abided by tradition, and had always maintained a poker face. Even in the most dangerous situations, there was no change in his expression. Yang Ziqing had interacted with him for so long, but had never seen any change in the old man's expression. Could it be that their vast star continent was actually defeated by a group of beggars? Yang Ziqing was in disbelief. He felt that there was a possibility that the fleet was recruited from somewhere by the Shang continent. Yes, they are training their synchronization. He Siji's eyes flashed with a light aura. From the flow of energy, their synchronization has reached a terrifying degree. Looking at the blood stains on their clothes, they should have a doctor with them. Looking at the damage on their equipment, they have definitely trained in the sea of energy for a long time. The enemy's military leader is very experienced, and has received proper military education and is extremely solid. He CG had a pair of blue eyes, his aquiline nose made him look somewhat stern, he stood perfectly straight, the military uniform on his body was meticulous. He did not reveal any emotions, and the expression on his face gave people the feeling that it was carved out of stone. Yang Ziqing had never seen such a shabby army before. The real underworld continent's demonic mounts? Yang Ziqing was startled once again. Underworld continent's demonic mounts? Yang Ziqing was startled but then snorted, "No wonder. The underworld continent's demonic mounts are the most untrustworthy, they are indecisive people. It should work." He CG muttered, "As long as we increase the training we can specially design tactics for them and raise their individual strength." An army that was transformed like that was extremely useful. Look at them, they no longer have the slippery aura of mercenaries. On the contrary, they have the aura of elites. Their formation seemed to be unorganized, but there was actually something special about it. It should be a specially designed tactic. The enemy's commander is very impressive. He actually has a mercenary group under him? Could it be that they did not have enough soldiers? Yang Ziqing was puzzled. Then why? He CG noticed Yang Ziqing's expression, but he did not get angry. Even he himself thought that it was impossible when he first thought about it. Very quickly, Yang Ziqing came to his senses and couldn't help but mock himself in his heart. Why am I thinking so much? Lord, he CG had a pair of eyes that could see through everything. What was it that could cause the iron-faced old man to reveal such a shocked expression? Yang Ziqing narrowed his eyes and said uncertainly, "It seems to be flowing?" He CG shook his head, "Don't underestimate them. The content of their training was clearly targeted. Small-scale infiltration and intersecting attacks were very sharp. The enemy's commander-in-chief should be thinking of building them into an army that specializes in urban warfare. It's a genius idea." Yang Ziqing pointed to the group at the back that obviously had fewer people. What about the group at the back? They seemed to have less people. He CG was extremely sensitive to the aura released by the army. Training in the sea of energy? Are they tired of living? That was the reason why he CG followed them. The Shang continent's military strength was completely exposed to the old general. The old general's evaluation would determine their mission. Xianxia's betrayal was originally not a big deal. He was just a commander of a cannon fodder army that was made a figurehead. But the silver-grade General Sun Jia had also lost his life to him, and that caused an uproar, and that was the first time his name entered the ears of the higher-ups of the vast star continent. He CG, who was by his side, watched attentively. He CG was the military minister of the vast star continent, and he and Yang Ziqing were the left and right arms of the continent lord. Yang Ziqing was in charge of internal affairs, while he CG was well-versed in military affairs. When he was young, he was a famous general with outstanding military achievements, but as he grew older his body weakened, and he had no choice but to return from the front lines, and was in charge of teaching the talented youths in the continent. Out of all the silver-grade generals in the vast star continent, a third of them were groomed by him, and the rest had all received pointers from him. Thus his reputation in the vast star continent was second only to the continent lord. Suddenly he reacted and his face became unnatural. "Xianxia. That is Xianxia." The two of them looked at each other. They were excited and worried at the same time. But he quickly frowned. He had crossed paths with Bing before. That crafty man would definitely not make such a low-level mistake. And there was also Crane. That quiet young man definitely had noble blood flowing in his body, and was similarly not someone who could be easily fooled. Mercenary army? Yang Ziqing was startled. What do they want to do with a mercenary army? Yang Ziqing nodded his head. He CG was truly worthy of being an old general who had groomed a few silver-grade generals. His sharp eyes were far from what Yang Ziqing could compare to. He CG was extremely familiar with Yang Ziqing and did not hide anything and said, exactly the opposite. If this old man did not guess wrongly, this group must have just gone through a long and arduous journey. No, it should be in the Sea of Energy undergoing training on foot. What kind of place was the Sea of Energy? Danger lurked everywhere, and it was a place where people could lose their lives at any time. There were energy corrosion everywhere, and the unstable chaotic energy flow. Even warships sailing in the sea of energy would easily have accidents. Those are not armies. It was the first time He revealed an uncertain tone. They might be strong martial artists. Strong martial artists? Yang Ziqing was dumbstruck. It was Yang Ziqing's second time coming to the Shang continent. He had just arrived and witnessed the strange fleet entering the Shang continent. We did not lose unjustly. He regained his usual expressionless face. The other party's strength far exceeds ours. Just at that moment the old man heaved a sigh of relief. Yang Ziqing acutely sensed the dispirited look on the old man's face. He was full of praises. They have 3 armies. He said solemnly. He knew that his evaluation was crucial to Yang Ziqing's judgment, so he decided to tell Yang Ziqing everything that he had observed, so that Yang Ziqing could refer to them. He's expression became serious. Those are the underworld continent's demonic mounts. For some reason Yang Ziqing's heart jumped. He did not explain further, it was just a guess. The first army is a typical standard army. Look at the way they are advancing, furthermore notice the energy flow around them. He said. This topic made him feel uncomfortable and he immediately asked, what about the people behind them that are covered in light? He almost thought that he had heard wrongly. The vast star continent had organized a few training in the Sea of Energy, but that was in fleets. Training in the Sea of Energy on foot? If not for the fact that these words came from He whom Yang Ziqing respected, he would have snorted. Yang Ziqing was cautious and curious. I hope Master can give me some pointers. Ziqing does not understand much and can't tell what's so special about them. Their equipment seems to be tattered and looks somewhat unpresentable. He knew that Yang Ziqing was not clear about such things and explained, there are many fake underworld continent demonic mounts in the market and it is extremely common. There are very few real underworld continent demonic mounts, and their examinations are extremely strict and they are extremely strong. To be able to gather 500 real underworld continent demonic mounts, that is extremely rare. Do not look down on these 500 people, their fighting strength is extremely terrifying. They are most likely the last batch of underworld continent demonic mounts, and now is the time where they crave for glory the most, and must not be enemies with them. The second army should be a mercenary army. He continued. Yang Ziqing's expression was somewhat tired. The unstable situation in the vast star continent had caused him to be mentally and physically exhausted. He had come here in hopes of forming an alliance with the Shang continent, and just relying on the vast star continent's own strength, they were unable to intimidate the wolves that were eyeing them covetously. Yang Ziqing calmed down. Seems like they are very strong. Yang Ziqing was also curiously observing the fleet. Yang Ziqing did not disturb him. He was much older than him, and even he had to respectfully address him as master in front of the old general. They are extremely strong. He was extremely certain. Yang Ziqing still had some doubts in his heart. Is that possible? Even He felt that it was impossible for there to be so many strong martial artists and spoke with hesitation. Their individual strength is not bad, but their coordination is too weak. No, they are completely uncoordinated. That is why I said they are not an army. The light regiments on their bodies should be miraculous as for so many people. When Yang Ziqing saw the shock on Master He's face, a strong sense of curiosity and unease rose in his heart. There was nothing worth praising about the fleet, and his attention was attracted to the soldiers with dust all over their faces. He was surprised. All of the soldiers were skinny, their faces covered in dust, their clothes were tattered and tattered, they looked like a group of beggars who were scavenging for scraps. The strength of an army for hire was far weaker than a regular army. Even if they were both silver-grade armies, a regular silver-grade army could easily destroy a silver-grade army for hire. Regardless of quality, training or equipment, an army for hire could not be compared to a regular army. Even the famous armies for hire had a fundamental difference from a regular army. No, they are the true underworld continent's demonic mounts. He's face revealed a rare look of regret. The vast star continent actually had the true underworld continent's demonic mounts, but he did not know about it. Yang Ziqing's face revealed a look of shock. Master is saying they are training in the Sea of Energy? He turned and was about to ask Hcg, but he noticed the shock on Hcg's face. The reputation of the underworld continent's demonic mounts was not good. Other than the fact that it was hard to differentiate between the real and the fake, they were notorious for killing their masters. Yang Ziqing's face revealed a look of disgust. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.